Good morning, everyone. I'm Dan Garodnick, Chair of the City Planning Commission and Director of the Department of City Planning. Welcome to today's public meeting and special review session of the City Planning Commission. We're going to pause for a moment just to ensure that the echo that we hear here in the hearing room is eliminated. While I do that, I will note that we have been joined by Vice Chair Knuckles, Commissioner Benjamin, Commissioner Cerullo, Commissioner Dweck. We're not at that part yet, Commissioner Kermani, Commissioners Mann, Osorio, and Rampersad, and we will be joined by Commissioner Marin on Zoom in a moment. Let me see if this is now fixed. Good. Before getting into today's agenda, I just want to share some recent city planning related news. Last week, Governor Hochul and Mayor Mamdani joined housing advocates and elected officials to support the significant reforms that the governor has proposed to the State Environmental Quality Review Act. Under the governor's proposal, critical housing, infrastructure, and climate-related projects that do not pose significant environmental impacts would no longer be subject to this lengthy and costly review process. These are welcome, common-sense changes that would make a real difference in our housing crisis. It defies reason that a modest apartment building with affordable housing should have to undergo, on average, 2 years of environmental review, and that is before public review even begins. These changes would create opportunities for further process improvements. Indeed, if implemented, the city is committed to getting most housing applications that qualify for the new change to the public review starting line in 6 months or less. Thanks to Governor Hochul and Mayor Mamdani for championing important reforms that will deliver more homes to New Yorkers faster and drive housing costs down. An upcoming event that I want to mention, the Department of City Planning is also holding a virtual information session on February 23, which will unpack the housing-related charter reforms that voters approved last fall. To attend the info session and learn how these reforms will make it easier for new homes to get built, please RSVP at nyc.gov/planning calendar. Let's get to the meeting for today. Since we only have one public hearing scheduled this week, we've moved Tuesday's items to a special review session on today's agenda. We'll start with a discussion of our upcoming votes and hearing, switch to the public meeting to actually conduct those votes and hearing, and then switch back to our special review session to go over new projects and other city council modifications. Okay, everybody clear on that? There will be a quiz. Okay. On the first vote for today, we'll have a proposed demapping by the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation on the Lower East Side. The agency is seeking to eliminate a portion of Allen Street between Delancey and Rivington Streets to transform the Allen Street Mall median to a public park and repurpose the closed restroom as a concession stand to serve the community. The next vote is on a proposal by HPD to redevelop a city-owned building into a new mixed-use project with 200 income-restricted affordable homes at 1727 Amsterdam Avenue in Manhattan. Around 120 of these homes would be set aside as supportive housing, and more than 20 would be affordable senior housing. The building would also include a community facility to provide social services for the supportive and senior unit residents. The project would also be close to Jackie Robinson and Riverbank State Parks, and tenants would have easy access to the 145th Street subway stations. The Commission will then vote on an important infrastructure project by the New York City Department of Environmental Protection, the Newtown Creek Combined Sewer Overflow Tunnel. Working with the New York City Department of Citywide Administrative Services, DEP is looking to acquire nearly 100 sites throughout Western Queens and North Brooklyn to facilitate the construction of a 3-mile-long tunnel with a 50 million gallon storage capacity. This tunnel would intercept the combined sewer overflow from 4 major outfalls during a storm event, reducing flooding around the creek and in neighborhoods like Long Island City, Maspeth, Blissville, Greenpoint, and East Williamsburg. Heading to Staten Island, we'll also vote on 3759 Hamilton Avenue, a mixed-use building in St. George that would include nearly 370 homes, of which over 110 would be income-restricted affordable, as well as community facility space, ground floor retail, and publicly accessible open space. The site is near the North Shore Waterfront Esplanade Park, the Staten Island University Hospital Community Park Baseball Stadium, the Empire Outlets Mall, and the St. George Transit Hub. Finally, we're going to vote on an application by the Parks Department to authorize the reconstruction of the Liati Ikafugi Playground in New Brighton, Staten Island. This work will include upgrades to the basketball court, planting beds, splash pad, swings, game tables, and new pathways to make the park more ADA accessible. We only have one public hearing on our agenda today, as I noted before. That is a proposed commercial overlay for St. Francis Prep, which is a private Catholic high school located in Fresh Meadows, Queens. This overlay would legalize an existing illuminated, non-flashing sign on the school's property. Switching to new items in the special review session, we're going to begin with the proposed rulemaking to implement the Affordable Housing Fast Track, which was created through last year's city charter reforms. The Affordable Housing Fast Track provides an expedited public review process for land use applications that deliver affordable housing in the 12 community districts that have produced the least affordable housing over the prior 5 years. The Fast Track draft rules establish a methodology to calculate the key components of the affordable housing development rates to determine which community districts will qualify for the Affordable Housing Fast Track. We then head to Jamaica, Queens to learn about a proposed amendment to the city map. In the 1950s, during the era of Robert Moses, the city sought to widen the stretch of Atlantic Avenue and create additional streets to accommodate more vehicular traffic. This would have entailed demolishing and paving over many local homes and businesses. The actions were never actually carried out in practice, but they did happen on paper, and the city map continues to reflect them to this day. Now the Department of City Planning is seeking to address this discrepancy by demapping these unbuilt portions of Atlantic Avenue and the surrounding streets, so the city map reflects the neighborhood as it actually exists. As a follow-up action to the Jamaica Neighborhood Plan, this demapping would undo a vestige of car-centric mid-century planning. It would also have practical benefits, allowing people who live in this area to renovate their buildings, to build something new without interference from the city map. From Jamaica, Queens, we'll head to St. George, Staten Island to learn about a mixed-use project at 198-208 Richmond Terrace. Located near the North Shore Waterfront Esplanade Park, the Staten Island Ferry Hawks Baseball Stadium, and Empire Outlets Mall. The building would include nearly 120 new homes, of which up to 35 would be income-restricted affordable permanently. The building would also include community facility space. We will then review a proposal to facilitate a new long-term care facility building with around 130 beds at 2553 University Avenue in Kingsbridge Heights in the Bronx. We'll review modifications from the council on two projects, 1417 Avenue U in Homecrest, Brooklyn, and 6312 in Woodside, Queens. And with that, Madam Secretary, the floor is yours. Thank you all for your patience with that intro. Thank you.
Good morning and welcome to the City Planning Commission special review session for Wednesday, February 18th, 2026. The time is 10:13 and a quorum is present. First, we have future votes for consideration today. Staff have prepared reports for Allen Street Mall demapping, also 1727 Amsterdam Avenue Hilltop Apartments. Additional testimony and comments were shared with you, and Audrey Wachs is here to present.
Morning, Commissioner. Good morning.
Morning.
Turn on your mic, Audrey. Thank you.
Is this on?
Yes. Okay, perfect.
Good morning, Commissioners. Today I'm here to present my staff recommendation for 1727 Amsterdam Avenue Hilltop Apartments. So to summarize the project, again, HPD is seeking the designation of an urban development action area, approval of an urban development action area project, and disposition of a city-owned lot located at 1727 Amsterdam Avenue in Hamilton Heights, Manhattan Community District 9. Approval of actions would facilitate the development of a 9-story mixed-use building with 200 dwelling units, including senior, supportive, and low-income units, plus community facility space for a healthcare tenant. DCP recommends approval of the application and the proposed action. The proposed action advances the city's fair housing goals by facilitating the redevelopment of an underutilized site in the Hamilton Heights Sugar Hill neighborhood, an area at highest risk for residential displacement, into 200 senior, supportive, and low-income units, plus community facility space for healthcare services. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Next, staff have prepared reports on DEP Newtown Creek CSO Tunnel. There was a follow-up memo and additional comments in your materials, and Derek is here to present.
Great, thank you. Hi, Derek.
Good morning, Commission. Maybe I'll just get started and it'll pop up. All right. This is a pre-vote department recommendation for the DEP Newtown Creek CSO Tunnel, an application by the New York City Department of Environmental Protection for combination site selection and acquisition, as well as site selection of city facilities actions. To facilitate the project, DEP seeks actions for a total of 99 properties near Newtown Creek in the neighborhoods of Greenpoint and Williamsburg, Brooklyn, Community District 1, Blissville and Long Island City and Queens Community District 2, and Maspeth, Queens Community District 5. The department supports this application and the actions which together would facilitate the development of a new 3-mile, 50 million gallon capacity combined sewage outflow tunnel that would connect 4 existing sewage outfalls to the Newtown Creek Wastewater Resource Recovery Facility. The department recognizes that the proposed project is located in close proximity to the existing sewage outfalls, which produce the majority of CSO discharge into the creek, and where land use in the immediate surrounding areas primarily consists of heavily industrial uses. The Industrial Plan NYC outlines this area as appropriate for core infrastructure in and around the Newtown Creek watershed. The department recognizes the comments of the community boards, borough presidents regarding informing property owners, community members, and community gardens regarding construction updates and impacts. And while outside the scope of the commission, the department supports DEP in this effort and appreciates the considerations made for neighborhood impacts and potential for future open space. In summary, the department supports this application as it proposes improvements to water quality in a heavily polluted water body, proposes careful construction of a major capital project, considers future resiliency impacts for lasting benefits, and fulfills requirements by various bodies of regulation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before you go, we have a question from Commissioner Mitt.
Hi, Derek. Just a quick question on the open space. We talked about this at the hearing. Given that, you know, this is waterfront, and that there's not really a planning strategy for Newtown Creek long-term, and there's some very large sites that we're talking about DEP acquiring. I was asking DEP about the potential for some waterfront open space. You know, they've obviously done this work in Newtown Creek with the significant sewage treatment plant there. So do you know if there's any follow-up happening around a kind of planning strategy for the waterfront that links some of the open spaces that are already there, even if they're sort of small and incomplete?
I don't have a full follow-up, but it is my understanding that the applicant DEP is pursuing strategies for placement of and incorporation of additional open space in the project area.
Okay, yeah, I mean, obviously we're voting on this today, and hopefully the council will take this up. I was hoping that we would have a little bit more follow-up on that point, given that, you know, there's been some advocacy in Newtown Creek for a long time, and then there's not really a game plan for the future of Newtown Creek, as far as I can tell, other than the environmental cleanup. And because the city's invested so much money in some of the open spaces, it seems like there's some value in trying to connect them as we acquire very large sites for this DEP facility. So thanks, Derek. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Derek. Great. Let's move on to the next.
Lastly, for consideration is Liati Ikafugi Playground Reconstruction in Staten Island Community District 1. Briefing materials were included in your weekend materials. The second item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of a zoning map amendment in Queens Community District 8. Our presenter is Mary Charlotte Gitlin, who is on Zoom.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This application is at 6100 Francis Lewis Boulevard, and it was certified on November 3rd in 2025 and is now back for pre-hearing. And a public hearing is scheduled for today on February 18th. Next slide, please. As I said, this is a private application by St. Francis Preparatory School. It's in the Fresh Meadows neighborhood of Queens in Community District 8. And the proposal is to map a commercial overlay to legalize an existing illuminated non-flashing sign. No new development is proposed. This image is facing north towards Horace Harding Expressway and shows the sign along the west side of Francis Lewis Boulevard. Next slide, please. The applicant seeks a zoning map amendment from the existing R4 zoning district to an R4 district with the C1.
Hold on one second. Pause for 1 second. Just because the slides are not advancing here in the hearing room.
Okay.
So just pause for 1 sec. We're still at the St. Francis Prep commercial overlay intro slide. So let me just pause you for 1 sec.
Yep, no worries. Let me know when I'm good to keep going.
Okay, hold on. Okay. I don't know if this is slide 2, but we have the zoning map amendment, the zoning map from R4 to R4 with the C12 overlay. Is that, why don't you pick it up from there? Is that slide 2?
That is slide 3. So
okay, let's go back one.
Yeah, you go back one slide and we can just show you all the image.
Okay, here's the view of the project site.
Yes.
Facing north toward Horace Harding Expressway. We got it. Let's move on to slide 3, and we're on the zoning map.
Next slide.
Slide 3, please. Here we go. Okay, back to you. Let's pick it up right here, okay?
Sounds good. So as I mentioned, this is a zoning map amendment from the existing R4 district to an R4 district with the C12 commercial overlay. Next slide, please. And on January 7th of this year, Queens Community Board 8 voted 19 in favor, 14 against, and 0 abstaining for a recommendation of approval without conditions. Next slide, please. And on January 29th, 2026, the Queens Borough President held a hearing on this application, and on February 3rd provided a recommendation of approval without conditions. So thank you very much. I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. Any questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Noting that we will be picking that one up for a public hearing shortly. Okay. All right. What's next, Madam Secretary?
Next, we will pause this special review session and open the public meeting.
Great. Welcome, everybody, to the public meeting of the City Planning Commission. Today's date is February 18. Madam Secretary?
Good morning. This is the City Planning Commission public meeting held remotely and in person in the CPC hearing room at 120 Broadway, Lower Concourse. Today is Wednesday, February 18th, 2026. I will now call the roll. Chair Garodnick.
Here.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Here.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Present.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Here.
Commissioner Crowell is absent. Commissioner Dweck.
Here.
Commissioner Gold on remote.
Yes, yeah, and just want to note that I was on for the earlier session as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Goodrich.
Here.
Commissioner Kamani.
Here.
Commissioner Mann.
Here.
Commissioner Marin on remote? Not yet. Commissioner Osorio.
Here.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Here.
A quorum is present. The first item is the approval of the minutes of the special public meeting of Monday, February 2nd, 2026.
Great. On the minutes, I make a motion to approve the minutes of February 2.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman, for the second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Okay, minutes are approved. Thank you.
Scheduling calendar numbers 1 through 5, scheduling Wednesday, March 4th, 2026, for a public hearing to be held in person in the CPC hearing room, 120 Broadway, and remotely.
Commissioner Benjamin has pre-seconded my motion, which is as efficient as one could get. So I'm going to make the motion, and it has been now seconded by Commissioner Benjamin. Thank you. All those in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed, nay. Okay, thank you, Commissioner Gold. Resolution is adopted. Thank you.
The next part of the calendar is the report section on page 6. Borough of Manhattan, calendar numbers 6 and 7, Allen Street Mall demapping, Community District 3. Calendar number 7, C, 250306 MMM. Calendar number 8, N, 250307 ZRM. In the matter of applications for a city map amendment and a zoning text amendment concerning Allen Street Mall demapping. For favorable reports on calendars numbers 6 and 7. Apologies. Let me correct the calendar numbers. I said calendar number 6, B, 250306 MMM. Calendar number 7, N, 250307 ZRM. For favorable reports on calendar numbers 6 and 7. Chair Garodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Crowell is absent. Commissioner Dweck.
Aye.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Commissioner Goodrich.
Yes.
Commissioner Kermani.
Yes.
Commissioner Mann.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin. Commissioner Osorio.
Yes.
Commissioner Rompershad.
Yes.
Favorable reports have been adopted on calendar numbers 6 and 7. Calendar number 8, 1727 Amsterdam Avenue, Hilltop Apartments, Community District 9, C 260071 HAM, in the matter of an application for a UDAP designation, project approval and disposition of city-owned property concerning 1727 Amsterdam Avenue, Hilltop Apartments. For a favorable report on calendar number 8, Chair Garodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Abstain.
Commissioner Benjamin.
I'm voting aye, but I would like to make sure that the relocation of the Heritage House, which was described during our public hearing by both HHC and DCAS, as well as by the director of Heritage House as being a critical part of this whole project, is still on track, and that all agencies are working to make sure that Heritage House is relocated into the building at 1649 Amsterdam Avenue as swiftly as possible so that services can continue in an uninterrupted way, and that the ophthalmological community facility that is currently in the building will be able to move back into the community facility space that is part of this project. And with that, I vote aye.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Aye.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Goodrich.
Yes.
Commissioner Kamani.
Yes.
Commissioner Mann.
I just want to echo Commissioner Benjamin's comments about the relocation of the healthcare facility and the urgency of making sure that happens before the existing one closes. And want to also just thank the community for coming in force to our public hearing, for the thoughtfulness of their comments. I know this was a difficult application, but I vote yes.
Commissioner Marin? Not yet. Commissioner Osorio?
I vote yes because we need any investments we can get to support low-income and formerly homeless New Yorkers now. But quite honestly, we can do much better than this. As our own report acknowledges, city applications should be leading by example on how to create a transparent and inclusive planning process to maximize the creation of affordable housing. Instead, the planning process here has dismissed a community that has put forth a proposal that would maximize the amount of housing at a moment where we praise those who do and punish those who do not. In addition, or instead, rather, we're forced to go with a proposal that has too many studios in an area that needs larger, deeply affordable apartments and is reducing the amount of community facility space when it should be doing the opposite. So again, I vote yes because this is an imminent need, but I really hope the city can address the recommendations articulated in the City Planning Commission report to maximize public benefits on public land. Thank you.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
A favorable report has been adopted on calendar number 8. Boroughs of Queens and Brooklyn, calendar numbers 9 and 10, DEP Newtown Creek CSO Tunnel, Queens CD2 and 5, Brooklyn CD1. Calendar number 9, C260063 PCY. Calendar number 10, C260064 PSY. In the matter of applications for site selection and acquisition concerning DEP Newtown Creek CSO Tunnel. For favorable reports on calendar numbers 9 and 10, Chair Garodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Goodrich.
Yes.
Commissioner Kamani.
Yes.
Commissioner Mann.
I just want to echo my comments earlier that this is a significant acquisition of land by an agency that obviously delivered a critical project. I just hope we don't miss an opportunity to achieve co-benefits with the project, including open space along Newtown Creek to link with existing open spaces. But I vote yes.
Commissioner Marin. Commissioner Osorio.
I vote yes, recommending an amendment to the report where we elevate the importance of the IBC, the industrial character, and the needs for infrastructure improvements that support local industrial businesses.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
I would like to align myself with the comments raised by Commissioner Osorio, and I vote yes.
Favorable reports have been adopted on calendar numbers 9 and 10. Borough of Staten Island, calendar numbers 11 and 12 has been laid over. Calendar number 13, Luigi Ifiguchi Playground Reconstruction, CD1, N260189ZAR, in the matter of an application for the grant of an authorization concerning Luigi Ifiguchi Playground Reconstruction for the adoption of calendar number 13. Chair Garodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Goodrich.
Yes.
Commissioner Kermani.
Yes.
Commissioner Mann.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin. Commissioner Osorio.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
Calendar number 13 has been adopted. Borough, okay, we'll next move to the public hearing.
Great. I will just remind people who are here to testify, 3 minutes is the time. We look forward to hearing from you.
Borough of Queens, calendar number 14, St. Francis Prep Commercial Overlay, Community District 8, C250302ZMQ, in the matter of an application for a zoning map amendment concerning St. Francis Prep Commercial Overlay.
Great. Give me a moment. Madam Secretary, why don't you introduce who we have here to testify, or who we have to present?
My laptop crashed, so hold on a moment. I'll ask you to come up. Introduce your team, and then I'll start.
Okay. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Leah Valone from Ackerman. I'm also joined by Steve Sinacori from Ackerman on behalf of the applicant here, St. Francis Preparatory, which I will refer to as SFP.
Welcome.
So, as just recently stated, we are seeking a zoning map amendment on behalf of SFP here. SFP is the largest private Catholic secondary school in the United States with approximately 2,500 students. This is a historically non-residential site, and according to DOB records, the school building was constructed in the early 1960s, and the site has continuously housed Catholic high schools. The rest of the slide here just lists registrations and achievements. The aerial view shows where the site is located in Fresh Meadows. The only thing nearby is Blue Bay Diner, which a lot of students use to eat after school. And note that there's no residential housing near the sign. The sign in question here is double-sided and non-flashing. And then in the right picture, you can see that students walk past the sign to enter the school, and those who are dropped off are usually dropped off right on this road here in front of the sign. This is the zoning change map. It shows the C12 overlay, which is an overlay that is mapped in residential districts to serve local needs. They're usually used by restaurants, grocery stores. And as stated before, the overlay would cover an area that's been occupied by non-residential uses for over 60 years. This is the proposed development. As also just recently stated, we are not proposing any development here. It would be to legalize the existing illuminated, non-flashing, double-sided accessory sign, which is currently not allowed in the R4 zoning district. In C12 districts, illuminated non-flashing accessory signs are permitted, subject to restrictions on size, location, and height. This sign does not flash, it changes intermittently and complies with the signage regulations applicable in the C12 districts. This is just some graphics of the illuminated sign, the community board recommended approval, Queensborough president approval recommendation. And then just to recap, the sign is a necessary and modern tool that allows SFP to communicate information to students, parents, as well as the surrounding community. I'm actually an SFP alumni, and while I was a student previous to the sign installation, my brother, Charles Vallone, is a recent graduate and was the SFP student body president. And he informed me how useful and beneficial the sign is to the vast student majority, as well as the community in general. The reason we're before you today is because SFP received a DOB violation for sign installation, where it became aware of this oversight by a hired architect. SFP is trying to correct this so that they don't need to remove something that's become a pillar for the school as well as the surrounding community. And that's it. So thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you very much. Did you say how long the sign actually was there? How long has it been there in this place?
Yeah, it was installed in 2022, and it received a violation shortly after this.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Let me see if there are other questions.
I just want to comment that clearly the legacy continues. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I would say. Thank you. Good to see you here. Okay, thank you very much. I will note that there are no members of the public who wish to be heard on this item. So we will close the hearing on St. Francis Prep's commercial overlay proposal. And Madam Secretary, please guide us to our next steps for this public meeting.
For this public meeting, Chair Grodnick, there is no other business before the Commission, but I do have some public information to share. For those of you who are unable to or did not wish to testify, you can submit written testimony online through DCP's website or by mailing your comments to City Planning Commission, Calendar Information Office, 120 Broadway, 31st floor, New York, New York, 10271, and the time is 10:37.
Great, thank you very much. So we'll adjourn the public meeting. And now we will continue our review session. Madam Secretary, let's talk about the next item.
The third item on our agenda is a citywide non-ULURP for a City Administrative Procedure Act CAPA rule change. Presenting for the first time to the Commission is William Tutt.
All right, William, good one to start with.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Welcome.
Good morning.
This presentation is about the proposed rules to establish the Affordable Housing Fast Track methodology. I'll start by giving an overview of the recent amendments to the New York City Charter, and in particular, the Affordable Housing Fast Track, along with the proposed City Planning Commission rulemaking to implement the Affordable Housing Fast Track and the timeline within which the proposed rulemaking would operate. In November of last year, New York City voters approved amendments to the city charter, including establishing a new Section 197F, the Affordable Housing Fast Track, a new Section 197G, the Affordable Housing Appeals Board, a new Section 197E, an expedited land use review procedure, and amending Section 198B to facilitate modernizing the city map. This proposed rulemaking focuses solely on Section 197F, the Affordable Housing Fast Track. Looking at the text of the charter, Section 197FA requires the Director of the Department of City Planning, no later than October 1st, 2026, to determine and post a list of the 12 community districts, which during the preceding 5 years had the lowest rate of affordable housing development. The charter further states that the rate of affordable housing development is measured by the total number of new affordable dwelling units in a community district as a percentage of the total number of housing units located in such community district at the start of each 5-year cycle. As demonstrated on the screen, the rate of affordable housing development as set out in the charter has the numerator as the new affordable dwelling units produced in the community district over the denominator, which is the total housing units at the start of each 5-year cycle. Next, the charter directs the City Planning Commission, in consultation with the Commissioner of Housing Preservation and Development, to develop the methodology to calculate the total number of affordable dwelling units in each community district, considering data that includes the total number of affordable dwelling units for which the DOB has issued a permit for construction work, and the date upon which an affordable housing unit becomes subject to a regulatory agreement or other similar instrument that provides for the creation of one or more affordable dwelling units. The term affordable dwelling unit has the same definition as the City Council set out in the Fair Housing Plan Amendment to the Charter, which defines this term as an income-restricted dwelling unit in an affordable housing building. Charter Section 197FB speaks to the process for affordable housing fast-track applications, setting forth that land use applications that would otherwise be subject to ULURP shall instead be subject to ELURP, the expedited land use review procedure, which provides for a concurrent community board and borough president review lasting 60 days and ending with the City Planning Commission's 30-day review, or 45-day review if the Affordable Housing Fast Track project requires an EIS. So putting it all together, through the Affordable Housing Fast Track, the Charter now enables an expedited public review procedure for applications that will deliver affordable housing in community districts that have produced the least affordable housing. The first step for enabling this fast track is for the Director of City Planning to determine the list of 12 community districts that had the lowest rate of affordable housing development during the prior 5-year period. This fast track will go into effect in January of 2027, and the affordable housing development rate will be calculated every 5 years. In order for an application to be eligible for the expedited review procedure under this mechanism, the project must be within one of the bottom 12 community districts and must provide affordable housing at MIH levels or better. The Department of City Planning will confirm prior to a project certification that a primary purpose of such application is to facilitate additional housing and affordable housing. Affordable housing fast track projects can include neighborhood rezonings and other EIS projects. And again, the public review of affordable housing fast track projects is shortened to 90 days and ends with the City Planning Commission. And I'll note that the City Planning Commission, in determining whether to approve an affordable housing fast track application, must make findings regarding the application's consistency with the city's Fair Housing Plan and the adequacy of existing transportation, sewer, and other infrastructure. Now we'll move on to discuss the proposed methodology, which is a key step to implementing the Affordable Housing Fast Track. City Planning Commission is proposing to amend Title 62 of the Rules of the City of New York by adding a new Chapter 13 to implement this fast track by establishing the methodology to calculate the number of new affordable dwelling units in each community district and a methodology to calculate the total number of housing units in each community district at the start of each 5-year cycle for purposes of determining the affordable housing development rate in each community district during that preceding 5-year cycle. These rules would fulfill the Charter's mandate for the CPC to develop this methodology, which is necessary to implement the Affordable Housing Fast Track by enabling the Director of City Planning to determine the 12 community districts. Again, the City Planning Commission is required to establish methodology to calculate the total number of new affordable dwelling units produced within the applicable 5-year period in order to calculate the affordable housing development rate. This proposal would count both publicly financed and privately financed new affordable dwelling units that have, within the applicable 5-year cycle, achieved both a start date and the issuance of a permit for construction work by the Department of Buildings. The start date milestone has long been the way that HPD captures new affordable dwelling unit production. And start date means the date on which an affordable dwelling unit either becomes subject to a regulatory agreement or a restrictive declaration. This point captures cases of publicly financed affordable housing or affordable housing created through zoning incentives, or an affordable dwelling unit has begun marketing through receipt of a notice of intent. And this point captures cases of privately financed affordable housing receiving only a tax exemption. The start date milestone is a point at which new affordable dwelling units are reasonably certain to be completed, as it's far along in the development process, and the affordable dwelling units are either subject to an income-restricting legal document or have begun the process of marketing. In addition to start date, the affordable housing building must have been issued a permit for construction work by the Department of Buildings, as identified in DOB public records. The permit for construction work milestone is consistent with how the Department of City Planning currently tracks new housing starts. So achieving both of these milestones, start date and a permit for construction work, would qualify a new affordable dwelling unit to be counted within the applicable 5-year period. This methodology would not include affordable dwelling units in an existing residential building subject to a preservation program, because it is not the creation of a new affordable dwelling unit, but rather an existing unit that is receiving financial assistance to preserve affordability. Moving on to the denominator of the affordable housing development rate, the proposed calculation for the total number of housing units at the start of each 5-year cycle would include the number of units identified in the prior decennial census, plus the number of net new housing units as publicly reported by the Department of City Planning's housing database. By factoring in the number of net new housing units, adjustments would be made to the baseline decennial census number to account for units added or lost because of new building, alteration, and demolition projects as identified by Department of Building public records and reflected in DCP's existing housing database. Only new units that are completed are factored into the net new housing unit adjustment for the purpose of calculating the total number of housing units in a community district. This proposed methodology for calculating each component of the affordable housing development rate is structured to capture both publicly financed and privately financed new affordable dwelling units, relies on existing public reporting mechanisms, and gives community districts credit for affordable units that are in progress and reasonably certain to be completed. The proposed rules define the relevant 5-year period as running from July 1st, 2021, and ending on June 30th, 2026, and repeating on the 1st of July and ending on the 30th of July every 5th year thereafter. This proposed 5-year period allows the city to utilize existing biannual reporting mechanisms established by HPD and DCP, which publish data based on the end of the city's fiscal year on June 30th. As proposed, the 5-year period would ensure that the October 1st determination of the 12 community districts can consider the most recent data on new affordable dwelling units published by HPD, in contrast with a rule that would define the 5-year cycle by calendar year. The proposed methodology in these rules would use existing public records produced by the Department of Housing Preservation and Development, the U.S. Census Bureau, the Department of Buildings, and the Department of City Planning. The proposed methodology would use HPD's existing biennial reporting mechanism for new affordable units, which is already disclosed in the Mayor's Management Report and is also subject to public disclosure under New York City's open data policy. The proposed methodology would leverage the U.S. Census Bureau's count on the number of housing units contained in a community district, as well as DCP's housing database, which biannually reports on the change in legal housing units over time and relies on public records and open data from the Department of Buildings. Reliance on public disclosure mechanisms, existing public disclosure mechanisms, serves the interests of transparency, efficiency, and accuracy. Transparency, because these reporting mechanisms are well established and familiar to interested members of the public and rely on publicly available open data. Efficiency, by avoiding the need to develop new, potentially duplicative reporting mechanisms to facilitate implementation of the new charter section 197F. And accuracy, because agencies responsible for these existing reporting mechanisms have established processes to review data and promote data integrity. Now we'll talk about the rulemaking timeline and implementation. City agency rulemaking operates in accordance with the City Administrative Procedure Act, and critical rulemaking steps are depicted here on the screen. Once the City Planning Commission assents to the publication of the proposed rule, the notice of public hearing, along with a statement of basis and purpose and the proposed rule text, will be published in the city record. This point kicks off the public comment period. Next, there will be a public hearing where members of the public may give comments on the proposed rule. After the public hearing, the CPC will consider public comments and potential changes to the rule and ultimately vote on the final version of the rule. The adopted rule would then be published in the city record. As for public engagement, staff from the Department of City Planning will organize a public information meeting on the proposed rule in March. Written comments on the proposed rule may be submitted until April 1st, and the public hearing will be held at 10 a.m. on April 1st at the City Planning Commission hearing room. And that is the end of the presentation. Happy to answer any
Excellent.
questions.
Thank you. A great first one. Okay, let me just kick it off. First of all, I will note for the commission, since we don't see the rulemaking process here every day, the vote that we would take at the end of this conversation or any questions here would be to publish the rule in the record, the public record, and the city record, and then it goes on to the process for comment and deliberation, and it'll come back to us. So just noting that. So obviously, a lot of work went into thinking through how to measure this question, and it seems to me that this is a thoughtful approach to both have a start date and a DOB permit to ensure some solidity to what's actually happening out there. I just want to know if you could spend just a minute. You laid out the proposal. I think it would be helpful if you just spent a minute explaining why you think that having the start date either defined by regulatory agreement, restrictive declaration, or marketing through notice of intent, and having a DOB permit was important. Why you landed on that as the process for this piece of the calculation.
Thank you, Chair Garodnick. Well, first and foremost, it is consistent with the text of the charter, and I can pull up 197A here. So sticking with the charter text, it tells us to look at these points. It tells us to consider, when considering the data, when the CPC is developing the methodology, to consider data including both DOB permits and the regulatory agreements or other similar instruments. And that is the way that under HPD production right now is captured, and start date does that. So what start date does is looks at regulatory agreements or restrictive declarations, and this captures the publicly financed affordable housing world, and then notice of intent, privately financed affordable housing world, and then also DOB permits. And including both of these milestones in the calculation, again, just kind of lends itself to making sure that these are units that are reasonably certain to be produced. They are being created as they achieve these milestones, and they will soon be finished. So it captures the affordable dwelling unit creation.
Okay, and just a moment on the denominator here. Using the number of units in the prior 10-year census plus the net new units in the DCP housing database. How did you come to that? Obviously, you're using public sources, which are recognized, so that's obvious and important to me. But what else was considered? How did you land on this?
Well, we identified that the Department of City Planning is able to do this, and we currently do this and have long been doing this with the housing database and through existing reporting mechanisms, and relying on the decennial census, a good accurate point of capturing the housing units in community districts, and then making the adjustments of net new units through the DCP housing database, through open data from the Department of Buildings. Marrying those two together to get the total is an accurate way to reflect it, and it exists today. So it just seemed like the best way to go about that.
Okay, thank you. Let me go to Commissioner Cerullo.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. Great presentation. So there's lots of different interpretations that I can draw from this, but I have a few questions that I hope will sort of clear up my understanding of this. And I know what its genesis is, but I want to understand the purpose of the methodology and what we're doing with it. And so first, how it applies and what it triggers. Is there one category or are there two? This wasn't clear to me. I thought I understood it, but I'm confused by it this morning. Obviously, it identifies the areas with the lowest rate of affordable housing that, whether through permits or whatever the trigger is of determining it, in the last 5 years. Is that separate from any project with affordable housing in it? And what I mean is would this process be triggered by any project where affordability is a component, or must that project be in one of the districts that have been defined by the methodology as being available for the abbreviated land use review?
Commissioner, I believe what you're asking is which types of applications would be able to utilize the Affordable Housing Fast Track.
Yeah.
So in order to...
And I appreciate you actually saying it in a way that you understand. So, thank you.
In order to qualify for this fast track procedure, a potential application must be within one of the identified 12 community districts. So if it's outside of one of these identified 12 community districts, it cannot go under ELRP through 197 by way of 197F. So that's number one. It has to be within one of the identified districts, 12 of the 59. And then a critical component of the application must be that it is producing additional housing and affordable housing. And this will be a project that will be certified must meet that component before it's able to utilize this fast track procedure.
Understood. Thank you. Is there a threshold for affordable units, the number of affordable units in a project to benefit from this? Let's say it's a project that's actually as of right, but they, by their own desire, are going to put 3 affordable units in it. But it's an as of right, it doesn't require affordable units. Well, can they, if they're in one of the 12 districts, can they utilize this process? Or is there a threshold that there has to be X percentage of the number of units in the development that must be affordable?
Typically, a project that will be coming under this fast track will be either mapping MIH or in an MIH area.
Okay.
Has to provide affordable levels at MIH levels or better, and then it would be required under mandatory inclusionary housing to make sure that
Of course. I'm trying to figure out, because not all neighborhoods are the same. So I'm always thinking about the neighborhoods that fall outside the typical example of how this all works. It's really, I'm always looking for the exception to the rule. And I can envision, and this is a little bit of my concern about, where did the number 12 come from? I can't recall if that was in the charter, if 12 was in the charter revision.
It was, yes.
I seem to remember,
Yeah.
but I wanted to, that was a question I wanted to confirm. But for example, identifying communities that fit in the definition of not having built affordable housing in the last 5 years, and just looking at that, I find is a huge mistake and fails to recognize are different communities. There are built communities that are not going to be building affordable housing at all. We could probably have 12 communities, 12 districts that probably could likely never build again because they have already standing, long-standing, whether it's special districts, historic districts, built 1- and 2-family homes, which of course I have a perspective about, that would fit into this category, but then likely never benefit, or a developer is never going to benefit from that, because we're focused on, have you built affordable housing in the last 5 years? And we're going to capture neighborhoods that will absolutely never have built affordable housing in the last 5 years over and over again, because their neighborhoods are 50, 70, and 150 years old. And so I don't know how that's going to work out in the long run versus, oh, someone's going to come in and map an MIH building in a neighborhood, or the North Shore of Staten Island, where that certainly could be the case. So there's a lot about this that is imperfect. I realize the methodology and this rule will just help us establish what neighborhoods, if a project were to come to it, could benefit from an expedited land use review process. It doesn't do anything more than that. But I just wonder if how we're going to be able to, are we limiting real options here? Because someone may come in the 13th district that isn't in our methodology, that even though their numbers aren't as bad as the first 12, the 6 of the 12 are likely never to really experience the kind of housing development with affordability involved that the city and the public in voting for this was seeking to actually have accomplished. We're putting all our chips in this one 12 district boat, and some of those districts, which are clear to be, we could name some of them right now, if it's just the methodology of have you built affordable housing in the last 5 years, well, they're never going to build affordable housing in the next 5 years. And that district's going to keep coming back and taking up a spot for other districts if they're in the 15th, 16th, and 17th on the list of neighborhoods where affordability is likely, there's buildable land. And so I get it, and I get what the purpose is, but I feel like something's missing in it that isn't recognizing a certain reality, and we're just stuck on the numbers. But that's just my...
Thank you, Commissioner. I certainly, you're raising the question about the charter reform itself, as opposed to the methodology here.
Yeah,
so
I
we
get the methodology,
take the point.
But if we're stuck on the methodology, which is find the 12, we may not be finding very much there, because there's going to be neighborhoods that are going to stay in the top 5 of not building affordable units because of their built environment already, absent a knockdown, which I don't think we should be incentivizing. Correct.
Thank you, Commissioner. Let me go to Commissioner Rampersad.
Thank you for the presentation. I have just 2 quick questions. The first question I have is, I understand the difference in the timeline between the ULURP and the ELURP, but in terms of within the agency, in terms of processing those applications, what would be the difference in terms of time? If, for example, in the ULURP, before it gets certified or we get the 30-day notification here, that project could be in our pipeline for what, a year, say maybe 18 months, I don't know. What would be the difference with this ELR process in terms of these applications? Is it streamlined within the department? If so, how?
The pre-certification process would be the same for both ELRP and ULRP applications, so it would be subject to the same internal protocol. But I'll note that there are internal reforms to the pre-certification process that are meant to streamline both ELRP and ULRP applications, and those are in the works.
The second question I have is, I understand with the data in terms of with the DOB, when permits are issued, there have been many jobs, I've seen it through your own practice, where a scope of work will change on the job. Permit was issued for, say, 90 units. During the course, something happens, financing, they decide we're not doing 12-story, we're doing 10. We're reducing the number of units. And hopefully they get the permit reissued. Does the DOB, or I guess transfer that data? How fast does that get transferred, I guess, to this data portal? You know what I mean? Like, is it in real time or is it,
Yeah, Commissioner, sorry to jump in. I jumped up to answer your last question, but on this one, that's one reason why we look both at the start date and the DOB permit, so that it's by the time the start date is established that you're getting really how many affordable units are being delivered, rather than the sort of maybe more contingent promise that comes at the initial pull permit stage, right? Okay. On your first question, which was, what was your first question?
Oh, with regards to processing, yeah.
There are very significant commitments that Mayor Mamdani has already made with respect to pre-certification. As you are all well aware, the single largest reason why pre-certification is so long today is related to environmental review requirements. And that's that number that the chair was speaking about earlier, that an EAS project takes roughly 2 years of pre-certification here. That's largely a creature of state law mandates and environmental review. The mayor and Deputy Mayor Bozorg have committed that should the governor's proposal go through, that pre-certification for all eligible projects, or I should say at least the majority of those eligible, would travel through pre-certification in 6 months or less. And projects would be eligible to receive that expedited review, regardless of whether they're ULRP or ELRP.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, Commissioner Osorio.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks so much for the presentation of the materials. This is very useful, and I appreciate the opportunity to engage publicly on this. So I have a couple groups of questions. I'll start with the questions regarding the calculation, which is the question that you're asking us. So I very much concur with some of the questions raised by Commissioner Cerullo, and I would like to sort of like process them or interpret them in terms of, how do we get to measuring things in this particular way? For example, we approve permits all the time. Most of the time, we don't know really how long it takes to build them. And in some cases, the property could be flipped and what we approved, doesn't happen. So I'm wondering why you focused on the permit and not the actual building built, the unit built. That's the first question. Second question is, I'm also really interested in how you place an emphasis on the amount of affordable housing that has just been approved, or the amount of housing really that has been just approved as compared to the amount of affordable housing that exists, let's say, through rent-stabilized or rent-controlled apartments, just so that we can have a better context of how much affordable is the housing that exists there, not just what was recently approved, to kind of like factor in a little bit some of the points that Commissioner Cerullo was making in terms of the conditions in existing communities. And then the third question associated with that is, why didn't you consider vacancy rates as part of understanding, if you would consider existing housing, what are the communities that might have been building a lot or might have not been building a lot, but where vacancy rates could be significant, having different implications in both? So let me stop there and see some of your thoughts. Just really interested in hearing how you got to these parameters.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. So for the first part, and I'll highlight the charter text here again. The charter directs us to consider Department of Buildings permit data. So that is why it was factored in there.
Okay.
And when coupled with the start date, it gives like an added latch of confidence that these units are far along in the development process. And in terms of vacancy rate, the charter, again, set out what the rate of affordable housing development is. It is new affordable dwelling units over total housing units at the start of each 5-year cycle. So the equation was given, and then the directive was to consider the data that can calculate these given elements of the equation. And in terms of clarify a little bit on the denominator, I think this goes to your second point a little bit. That is total housing units. That is affordable plus market rate. So the new affordable dwelling units is taken as a percentage of total overall housing units, which is captures the total housing stock. It's not just, new affordable dwelling units over existing affordable dwelling units. It's new affordable dwelling units over the entire housing stock for that community district.
And is there an opportunity to factor in the size of the unit somehow? Again, I guess my second bucket of questions is really about the qualitative data to distinguish, sort of like the need for housing in one community district versus the other. For example, I'm really interested in what the text says about targeting MIH levels or better. Is there a way to identify community districts that perhaps, require more than MIH levels, deeper affordability? Is there a way to factor that in on one end through the calculation? I also wonder if, the city plans to prioritize some of these districts in terms of the amount of resources that could be allocated for them for housing subsidies. In other words, if this works, will we be able to subsidize more affordable housing there?
So with the rate of affordable housing development, the proposal is to look at the actual creation of the affordable dwelling units. But when it comes to reviewing a project within one of these 12 community districts that is here for review, the commission can consider more of the qualitative factors, but the calculation is more narrow on the data to capture what is the rate of affordable housing development.
Gotcha.
Just to add a little bit of color, when you consider an application on the Affordable Housing Fast Track, one of the things you'll be looking at is measuring that application against the city's larger fair housing plan, which is going to come sometime this year. And that plan will talk about overall numbers of needs for new units, overall numbers of affordable units. And in fact, the city council directed in passing that legislation that the city assign district-level targets for various kinds of affordability. And so, Commissioner, I think that when you're considering an individual application, as William just noted, you can give a much more textured consideration about whether that accords with a citywide plan for addressing affordability and the particular conditions of that district. I also just wanted to say one additional point about why we are considering start date and permit rather than a completed unit. I think within the text here, you could have looked only to affordable units that are completed, fully completed, like they're occupied. We chose an earlier stage of the process when affordable units are reasonably likely to be delivered, quite likely to be delivered, but not quite done. And the reason is so that community districts get credit for affordable dwelling units that we can reasonably believe are on the way. The thought being, if one community district is in that bottom 12 in a 5-year cycle, as a result, the applications start churning and people start pulling permits and projects are on the way. They might have a lot of affordable dwelling units on the way, but they're not finished yet. And we would make it less likely by counting units on the way that community district will be in the bottom 12 in 2 successive district cycles. So we thought it important to find a milestone somewhere between speculation about what's happening, what's on the way, and a completed unit. And it felt that permits and start dates was that right, solid middle point.
Thank you. That's very useful. And just a quick follow-up. So would that allow us to identify the units that might have been may be in the pipeline for a long time but haven't really materialized? In other words, that could still be, you know, eligible or not eligible, but qualify the criteria, but have been sort of like in that stage for more than a consecutive year?
Well, you have to, it's a very clear methodology that we've set out here. You have to have a start date and a permit. If you are, say, an approved affordable housing plan, but you haven't yet closed financing, you haven't yet started your construction work, you're just simply not counted here, right? And so that's a case that we see all over the city where you have a capital pipeline that means that there's additional delay after entitlement sometimes before an 100% affordable housing project can get on the way. Those will not be counted. So, I think that's the largest category of project you have in mind.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, do I have time for one more question? Yeah. Thank you. So now I'm interested, and I don't know if this is the right time to discuss it, but I'm interested now in the implementation of this and the implications for our engagement with the proposal. So I have some questions about the findings and the nature of the findings that we could, brainstorm on this or define together in terms of how we'll actually sort of like review them, and also some questions about how early in the process, especially during the pre-certification stage, we get to engage with the proposal. So I'm wondering if maybe on that second question, is there anything that you can share with us on what do you think is possible from a legal point of view, knowing that we're going to have a less amount of time to review some of these proposals, and we I think need to be part of the conversations earlier rather than after certification. And then in terms of the questions for the findings, I'm very, very interested in hearing whether there's any way to characterize the conditions or distinguish conditions from one district to the other in terms of where there could be disadvantaged communities designated under the state's, climate change laws, for example, or, for example, whether the application falls within the 100-year floodplain, projected floodplains, stormwater inundation areas. I'm really interested in just understanding a little bit, how can we factor these in now rather than later so that we don't slow the proposals, but rather maybe front load some of the analysis to expedite how we think about them.
Thank you, Commissioner Soria. Let's give them a chance to answer, and then we're going to move on to Commissioner Gold on Zoom. Go ahead.
Sure. I would say to your point about how does this change commission engagement in the total process, let me say that there is another rulemaking that we hope to draft and brief you on in the coming months. That is a rulemaking respecting the process on the expedited land use review procedure itself. Okay. I think that's a good time for us to discuss, how that procedure should play out.
Can I interrupt you for just a second? Do you think that it's possible for us to engage in conversations around that before the rulemaking sort of like actually begins? In other words, for us to brainstorm, maybe provide some input before we draft that?
Well, I am personally very excited to talk to you whenever you'd like to talk to me, Commissioner, about this. And so we are drafting this at the staff level. But our sort of thought was that we would put together a proposal, a sketch with text, then brief you and put in your package materials and answer any questions you have about that. Then, like this, make a public review. And that would only begin the process of receiving more public comment about the rule. And so we were thinking about the process playing out similarly to the process that has just played out. But if you have particular sort of thoughts or questions about how ELRP could play out, we should just have a conversation about it.
I would love that. Thank you.
Yes, please. Secondly, as to your point about, how do you consider all of the individual circumstances that are relevant to an individual application on the Affordable Housing Fast Track, I would suggest that there's this new, unique piece of the Affordable Housing Fast Track, which is the consideration of consistency with the city's Fair Housing Framework, which is attempting to take a bird's eye view of the city's needs and to take into account individual circumstances in districts. You marry that with the kind of totality of the circumstances review you do today for applications under ULURP, where you ask questions like, is this in a resilient area? Does this meet an appropriate land use rationale because of what's around it? And so I think that fundamentally, the individualized review you will give to applications on the Affordable Housing Fast Track does not differ from the individualized totality of the circumstances review you give to applications under ULURP today, but you are assisted and in fact directed by the charter to give an extra look of how does that individual application comport with this bird's eye view city fair housing framework.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Just really quickly, one of the things that I would love to discuss in that context or under that line of thought is how can we define in zoning, through zoning, the places where this should or shouldn't apply, specifically in terms of the flooding situation, knowing that the stormwater inundation areas will be codified soon, but the zoning resolution is already referencing them. I would love your input in terms of identifying opportunities for engagement on specifically that. Thank you.
I think that I would put it as a separate track, a question of where, given climate change, are appropriate places for new housing development in New York City. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Gold on Zoom.
Excuse me. Thank you. And clearly a lot of work has gone into this. I just wanted to clarify a couple of points. One is, okay, so I get the concept of building permit and start date. It sounds like hands are kind of tied there. I don't love it, given how long these projects could take. But I guess I just wanted to understand a little better on the start date as defined. What typically, I think the quick of it is the way it's framed. It is a good advance, right? That suggests that the program or the project will happen. But I guess typically, as I read it, I'm curious, what comes first typically in a typical project? Is it the start date or is it DOB permit? I would think the start date would come before that DOB permit, but based on the definition. But just clue me in on that.
There are circumstances where either could come first. It's pretty project specific. I believe that start date would typically come first, but it could be followed by BP soon thereafter. But there are circumstances where the building permit might come first. Again, it's just very project specific.
But I guess just walk me through that process, because I'm slightly familiar, but not as familiar with it. Just to get the DOB permit, wouldn't we know what we're building? Wouldn't we have to know what we're building at that point? And so wouldn't that be framed out already, or no?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Michael Sandler from HPD. Typically, the building permit would actually come first. The start date refers to kind of when the project is financed for most projects. So for projects that are using MIH or the Universal Affordability Preference or receiving HPD financing, the start date is kind of when the project is financed. That's when construction starts. In order to receive financing, you have to already have your building permit so that the bank is going to make that loan. And then for projects that are taking advantage of the as-of-right tax incentives like 421A, 45X, 467M, the start date comes later during the construction of the project when they file with HPD their marketing plan, where we know that there's actually affordable units that are going into that project.
Got it. And so, in that case, how much later could it be from, sort of the point of building permit to the point that HPD says, go, and they have an official start date? Is that months or years? Or just
Yeah, so I mean, typical construction project that we see for large multifamily buildings is 2 to 3 years, and typically projects begin the marketing process around 6 months before the completion of construction.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful. And then a couple more for the city planning side. One is we say the methodology that we're using doesn't include affordable dwelling units in an existing residential building. Is there a way to capture those?
Existing residential building. Yeah, it captures newly created affordable dwelling units.
But I guess one of the footnotes or one of the notes was that the methodology we're using doesn't include affordable dwelling units that are in an existing resi building, right? So in other words, they don't, maybe you don't need a building permit, or maybe you don't need a start date. Basically, our format doesn't capture them. Is there a way to correct for that?
So what it doesn't
So,
capture is existing
God. Mm-hmm.
preservation. Yeah. So units that are currently affordable dwelling units that are subject to a preservation program. So those units would not be like counted again, for example.
Got it. Okay. And then one more.
And if I can, Commissioner, just elaborate on that, like the why
Sure.
preservation is not counted. I mean, so the motivating rationale for these reforms is an observation that we have inequitable share of the new production of affordable dwelling units, rather than an analysis that we have an inequitable share of, say, preservation of existing dwelling units. And it was centered first and foremost on this idea that we would unlock a more equitable share of new production. But I'll put aside whether under the charter's text you could count preservation units. Whether we haven't really decided whether to answer that question quite yet, about whether if you wanted to count preservation as a new income restricted unit. But the thought was, if it's an existing dwelling unit subject to a preservation program, it's often one that is already rent regulated, and the preservation program might be investing new resources in it. To think about that as a new affordable dwelling unit seemed somewhat inconsistent with the broader purpose of the charter reform. But so that was the rationale for why this methodology would consider only new income restricted affordable dwelling units.
Right. No, I mean, I certainly wouldn't want to double count, right? On the one hand, on the other hand, presumably, anything we can do at this moment to encourage additional, affordable dwelling units, something we certainly would want to consider, because, at the end of the day, we certainly want to, I hear what you're saying. We want to incentivize new construction on the one hand, but at the same time, additional units are additional units, right? So it's just something to think about, but it's definitely a challenging question. So I get that. And then the last one, and this one's probably really simple, but basically, if we count to start in a 5-year period, it achieves these two items. The next count moment comes, and we're still in quote unquote development. So we still have an open building permit, presumably. That unit or those units don't get counted again, right? They're the fact that they haven't gotten, say to TCO, it's still, it's a project. Let's make up a number. A project takes 7 years, so it's in the first 5-year count as new. It would move to. I guess that's a good question. It doesn't really move to the denominator at that point, or does it? When does it
is
move?
A good question. For purposes of the numerator, an income restricted affordable dwelling unit is counted in the cycle when it achieves the second milestone, right? So if it achieved one of those milestones, like it got its start date in a prior 5-year cycle and then pulls a permit in the second 5-year cycle, it's counted in that second 5-year cycle, or vice versa, right? And then with respect to the denominator, you are counted when you are completed. So yes, there is, it's hypothetically possible that units will be on the way for the purposes of the numerator, but not completed for purposes of the denominator.
So if that happens as we're crossing, and let's just think about it for a second, just practically. If we say it's a 3-year project, and who knows, it started in the 5-year cycle, more than 3 year. I'm just thinking out loud about when it sort of shifts, right? Because to your point, if it's an active project, it's not ready to be counted in the denominator, but we've counted it once in the numerator. Does it stay in the numerator for that second cycle, or does it come out and are they penalized?
It's only counted in the numerator in the cycle in which it hits both milestones, right? So if you have a permit but not a start date, you're never in the numerator. You're only in the numerator in the cycle in which you hit the second 2 milestones. Then in a subsequent cycle, it's no longer in the numerator, because the numerator only looks to the new dwelling units that occurred in that prior 5-year cycle. And then the unit, should it have been completed, would have been counted in the denominator for that subsequent cycle.
Got it. So if it ran into the situation we were talking about, it would be it would be counted in a cycle, and the following cycle it would be completely out, right? And then I guess presumably if it got finished after that, it's in the next cycle in the denominator, right? So basically that unit disappears in the second cycle. Okay. or those
Correct.
units.
I'll
Got
just
it.
note
Got it.
that for the purposes of like it determining who's in the bottom 12, what really matters most is the numerator, because there's a high degree of sensitivity if you look historically between, say, the 6th worst and the 16th worst, right, for rate of affordable housing production. It might be that just a couple of units in the numerator will swing a district from the bottom 12 and then out of the bottom 12. And so what will really matter for most community districts in thinking about whether they're going to be in the bottom 12 is whether they have stuff in that numerator.
Got it. Perfect. Okay, that's super helpful. Thank you. And thanks for all the work that's gone in.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Mann?
Thanks for the presentation. Yeah, very clear and helpful. And obviously, this is a long conversation to come over, I think, many months and years, frankly, as the application of this charter revision becomes real. I guess one editorial point, just to the line of questioning. I think the challenge here is that moving forward, it's going to really depend a lot on HPD and where they finance affordable housing. And that's less about a community's tolerance for development and, frankly, more a reflection of where there are sites available and where there's public land available, obviously, too. So, and I think if we look back the last 10 or 15 years, it's historically in northern Bronx, South Bronx, Brooklyn, eastern Brooklyn. That's mostly just a reflection of the availability of public land, not even necessarily a community's interest in seeing affordable housing development. So that's just an editorial comment about, I think the challenge here is that HPD can really swing these numbers 5-year cycle over 5-year cycle, to the point that was just made. And so then the HPD pipeline becomes a real important conversation then for what communities have access to the public review process and which ones don't, which, again, will be an interesting thing as it plays out. I think the question I had on the data piece is that, so we're using a slightly different framework for thinking about new affordable dwelling units as opposed to new total housing units, meaning that, and I want to make sure I'm getting this right because I very well might not be, that if you have a DOB permit for a new housing unit that's not affordable, you're not counted in the denominator. Did I get that right?
So the denominator is not about new units. The denominator is about total units that exist at the beginning of each 5-year cycle. The numerator is about new creation of affordable dwelling units.
Understood, but the denominator includes units that are affordable housing that haven't actually yet been TCO'd or CO'd. No?
That does not. No, Commissioner. Denominator is based on completed units.
Based on completed units. So correct. In the scenario we were just talking about where something has a start date and it's got a DOB permit and it's affordable housing, it's not yet been TCO'd, nobody's occupying it. It ends up in the new affordable housing unit. And if it hasn't yet been occupied, let's say for the next 5-year cycle, for whatever, sort of challenging permitting issues or financing issues, what happens to that project?
Well, as soon as the project becomes completed, it will be in the denominator for...
So even if it's been, because forward. Again, 5-year cycles are actually relatively short in the context of development cycles, unfortunately, in New York City, right? It's not actually a lot of time. So I'm just trying to understand if something's been, DOB said you're good, HPD's financed it, and it's a new affordable housing unit, but it hasn't yet been occupied in the next 5-year cycle. Where does that allocation go?
In the next 5-year cycle.
Yeah.
So
maybe this is a minor point, but I'm just kind of curious about it in terms of, I guess the bigger point that I'm trying to make is why wouldn't we in the denominator also include DOB permitted housing in that community district?
So the denominator is based on decennial census as well as the Department of City Planning's housing database, which is reliant on open data from the Department of Buildings. So it does take into account DOB permitting and the adjustments for net new units. So within this 5-year period, it becomes completed. Within whatever 5-year period, it becomes completed based on DOB open data. It's reflected in the net new units that is adjusted to the decennial baseline census data, which if the calculation for that denominator. So
let me try to reframe my question for my own sense of clarity here. So I think that the point that I'm getting at is if we're trying to, the thrust of this sort of provision is really about how do we create a simpler process in places that are not producing a lot of housing or affordable housing, right? And we're trying to remove a barrier to the production of housing and affordable housing there. One of the things I would think we'd want to do is, quote unquote, reward communities that have been producing housing, whether it's affordable or not, because the affordable question is really an HPD question. They don't necessarily, communities can't decide, elected officials can't decide how much affordable housing gets built. That's primarily an HPD matter. And so I'm just trying to understand, for the denominator, if a new building permit is issued for a project, does that end up in the total housing units for that 5-year cycle, because it's in the underlying DOB city planning data set?
So I would start with, I guess, disagreeing with the idea that the thing that most matters is HPD's pipeline, because of course that misses the entire category of privately financed affordable housing production, right? Which is a very significant share of the affordable housing production that is done, does not depend on HPD's decisions about capital subsidies. And so the income restricted affordable dwelling units are counted for the purposes of the numerator, regardless of whether they are in publicly financed affordable housing production, which is, of course, a very significant share of the affordable housing production, but also privately financed affordable housing production that's not reliant on HPD capital subsidy, which is also a very significant share of the affordable housing production we see. And so
we can leave, that's a broader editorial.
So let's let them get to the second part now.
I just wanted to make sure I understood the second piece. Which again,
so again, like you're only in the numerator if you hit those two milestones during the 5-year cycle.
Got it.
You are only in the denominator if you are a unit that is completed, that exists at the start of the 5-year cycle.
Right.
And your question is, why would you not count?
Yes.
Permitted units that are not completed for purposes of both the numerator and the denominator.
Yes.
Well, I would note that were you to do that, you'd actually give communities less credit for new affordable dwelling units are on the way, because you'd be expanding the denominator at the same time you expanded the numerator, meaning that that numerator would count for less. The rate would show up as lower for the same nominal number of new affordable dwelling units. So I don't think we took a look at the charter language to say, could we do that within the language? And we can. But I would just note one policy consequence of making that decision would be that communities would get less credit for affordable units that are on the way.
Yeah, I guess what I'm noting is that if we want the most up-to-date information about what's happening in a place, the DOB permit data will afford that, and that because it gives us a look ahead of what's likely to happen in a place.
The only other thing I'll point out, Commissioner, I didn't mean to speak over you, is that as your colleague was pointing out earlier, permits change, plans change while something is in flight. Now, with respect to affordable units that are also going to have a start date, we're reasonably certain about the number of affordable dwelling units that are going to be completed because it has a start date. But in the absence of a start date mechanism, suppose you were trying to figure out the number of total housing units that are on the way in a community district without looking to completions. You'd be looking at a number that is in flux and necessarily contingent, which would add a little, what you'd really be finding out is the total number of housing units in that district, plus what developers have indicated they are likely to deliver.
Yes.
And so there would be a level of imprecision introduced there potentially. So that's another factor that you'd want to consider in thinking about whether to change the way the denominator is looked at.
Yeah, I think it's a question of what's the most current information we have as opposed to what's definitively accurate about the number of housing units. And I guess I would just err on the side of how do we keep tabs of what's actually happening in New York City in a fairly close way rather than the total housing units that exist as of date certain. For example, we've approved a bunch of large rezonings here. Those will not play out from a total housing units standpoint for quite a while. But those communities have said yes to lots of housing. And so it just strikes me as we should be acknowledging that and saying, yeah, you're right. You guys did say yes to lots of housing, and so we want to make sure that this doesn't, it acknowledges that fact, which I think is, again, as far as I can tell, the broad thrust of the charter reform.
And I think that that is what, if that is your motivating concern, I think that this approach does that best, because it says that even if they're not completed yet, affordable dwelling units are going to count. Communities are going to get credit.
I disagree.
For stuff on the way.
I totally disagree. I think that the volume of housing production in some of these places is primarily going to be market rate housing for some of these rezonings, and that the total housing unit number is going to not reflect that significant change that's happening in these places. So I strenuously disagree that that it misses the housing pipeline for market rate housing.
I think we have a different perspective, but if I could just try it one more time. If your concern is our community is going to get credit for, say, the Midtown South rezoning, right, which is like a big change, and how do we make sure that they get credit at a reasonably soon point so that a community with that many new affordable units on the way isn't counted in the bottom 12? I think this methodology does that best by saying that new affordable dwelling units don't have to be completed. They can be on the way. And that just plans generally for income restricted and market rate units won't be counted in the denominator. So that means the denominator is smaller than it would be otherwise if you were to have a bigger look at it, and the numerator is bigger.
I think what you're misunderstanding is I'm not trying to privilege a specific outcome. What I'm saying is that the most accurate indication of what's happening in a place, or what's likely to happen in a place over the next 5 years, is what's in the pipeline, which is why it's in the numerator, not in the denominator. You put it in the numerator. You put the pipeline in the numerator. And I'm saying, let's put the pipeline in the denominator. Maybe it's not building permit. Maybe there's another data point in between building permit and TCO that makes sense there. But to me, that's a more accurate reflection of where housing is being built. So I don't want to continue.
Oh, no, I take your point. I would just say that it's true that you could try to figure out a milestone between a mere DOB permit and a completion for purposes of adding units to that denominator. You'd have to find one that's reliable, that has the degree of accuracy we would look for in data that's going to inform so consequential a determination.
Right.
And that you'd want it to, I think, rely on existing open data streams, because that serves interests of public transparency and data integrity and accuracy. And so I would not, we're going to go back and think about whether there is some intermediate point. But to echo comments William made in his initial presentation, one reason why we're relying on existing milestones and existing data sets is because they achieve that level of sort of accuracy and integrity.
Yeah, no, I'm not suggesting we create bespoke data sets for this determination. I think disagreeing. And you guys have obviously run the analysis and you figured out what these 12 are, and so maybe there's some policy discretion here that's happening as well. I assume you've played this out and imagined what would happen in this framework. So just the last question then, on the data question, is the department going to think about publishing this then in some kind of ongoing way, not just for the 12, but for community districts across the city, so that there's a ongoing way that folks can sort of track this? I know you referred to it being available in open data, which is not everybody is familiar with, scrubbing information from open data sets or the mayor's management report.
Yeah, so these are existing biannual reporting mechanisms. I think I would interpret your question as, should the city look at a new and different way of packaging this regularly so that people could just Google, like, where is my community district in the bottom 12 track? And we haven't discussed whether we would create a new public-facing reporting mechanism for that. We've been thinking about this primarily as sort of first things first, like what will be the methodology. I think it's quite a good point that we should take back.
I think it would make sense to include in the rulemaking here, or some other, that because this, I don't know this number, this new affordable dwelling units versus total housing units exists in a place. Maybe it doesn't. I just don't know.
Each component exists in a place and is subject to a public reporting mechanism. It's the putting it together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I just would encourage. I'm sure you guys are thinking about this already, but encourage you to think about it, because if the difference really is a handful of units between the 12th and the 16th. Everything is going to start to matter in a different kind of way, because it means that one I mean, you guys get it. So it just requires, I think, even more care than with the underlying sharing of the information, right?
Yeah, it's quite a good point.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Benjamin?
Hi, thank you for the presentation and for the telephone presentation that we had earlier. And my questions fall into three groups, and I'm going to be pretty brief. And if you feel that you need more time to explain it, you can feel free to call me or to write to me. The first is the decision not to include preservation units. Many what are called preservation units, can opt out of the program or the program ceases unless they re-opt in. I don't understand why we wouldn't want to include Mitchell-Lamas that could be out of the program and no longer affordable. They could do whatever they want. They could co-op. Why we don't want to include those. Why we don't want to include the same for Article 5 when HPD program ends and the regulatory agreement is over, and then HPD is searching for another mechanism to keep and preserve those units, otherwise they might not be preserved. Why we don't want to include that preservation that keeps units that could otherwise go market rate in the program.
Can I speak to that? Yes. I think it's a great question and something that we grappled with and discussed extensively. I think for the purpose of the intent and the language of the charter, it speaks to new affordable units. And it's also called a fair housing fast track, and it's based on these fair housing principles of ensuring that every community district is taking its part in housing growth. And so we focused on new construction for that purpose. And I'll note that in a preservation project, there is a risk of losing affordability, and you add that financing and you bring that affordability back, and that's like an important civic and public outcome. But what it doesn't do is create a new unit that someone could move into, because those units are already occupied by those tenants. We have a sort of an anti-displacement goal when we're doing those preservation projects. And so we focus for this on new units.
Affordable units, that would seem to be the antithesis of what all of these attempts are made to do, which is to increase the number, not decrease them, by letting them slip away and not counting them anywhere. So while all of you may have talked about preservation and decided that it was not a worthy goal in terms of monitoring that, I think it is, and I think that the public may well think it is. I also think it's unfair because those locations that have units like that, let's say Co-op City, are not getting any credit for the existence of their affordable housing. We're not saying to communities, oh, you have lots of affordable housing and we're going to give you credit. We're saying if you have lots of affordable housing, we don't care. It's only what you're able to produce that's new that we care about. If Co-op City burns to the ground, you're in the same position as would be, and I think that's a big mistake. So I would ask that you go back and look at that particularly. I would also ask that...
Commissioner, can I just, on that point?
Yeah.
I don't think anything in the charter language would allow us to look at the number of income-restricted units existing at the time, the start of a 5-year cycle, for determining eligibility of the 5-year cycle. That I think
didn't ask for existing units. I asked about units that have aged out of their eligibility and could go market rate.
So I think that we will need to, based on this discussion, take a fresh look at whether the charter text will allow for the consideration of preservation units, in addition to the policy considerations that we outlined that, staff at DCP in consultation with staff at HPD discussed in terms of considering preservation units. I do think we need to take a look at the flexibility of the text. So we will.
And many times they also come, we know that as projects are aging out of their regulatory agreements, HPD tries to work with them to keep them in an affordable world.
Yes.
Either with Article 5 or with new tax money or with subsidy programs. And so I think that the keeping, that I would possibly consider those as a new unit, because absent these efforts, it could be a non-affordable unit. So I urge you to go back and look at that.
We will.
I also wondered how, in this data-driven world, 202 is treated and NYCHA.
So in consultation with HPD, we understand that this framework will capture every kind of new affordable dwelling unit that is intended to be captured by the charter language, right? So were NYCHA and HPD to collaborate on creating new income-restricted affordable housing units, those would be counted for purposes of this rule. And if you have a question about it, I don't know enough about like the mechanics of 202 to answer offhand, but I would say that any affordability, we confirmed with HPD that any affordable program that is currently in the mix, state, federal, or local, that is resulting in new income-restricted affordable dwelling units will be counted for the purposes of the numerator.
And in terms of the denominator, how do we count the same things?
For the purposes of the denominator, a unit is a unit, regardless of whether it is income-restricted or market rate.
And NYCHA is included in that unit?
Yes, it is a unit.
Okay. So we'll just follow up on the 202 question?
Sure, we can.
I would appreciate that. And getting back to Commissioner Cerullo's question, I guess part of my concern, as I thought about it after we had the presentation and you answered a number of my questions, and of course that sometimes raises more questions as you think about it. I'm concerned about how we look at the capacity of different neighborhoods to produce more housing, and that goes to the heart of Commissioner Cerullo's question. If a neighborhood is basically 95 to 98% built out, they're not going to have the same capacity to produce affordable housing and to affect their standing as a neighborhood that's only built out to 60% capacity. So I think a couple of things, what this methodology does in certain ways is it keeps those neighborhoods who have less capacity to build on the list of, so to speak, evildoers. Because they don't have any more the capacity to increase the numbers of units. And there may well be numbers of other specific reasons why the capacity in a neighborhood is constrained. It could be that it's constrained by the fact that there's widespread soil contamination, and so building is much more expensive, so it's not a place that people are looking to build. So because I don't see anything, and I understand what your intent was, but I'd like to make this more robust by at some point acknowledging what the capacity of each one of these community boards is to produce more housing.
Yeah, well, I think in a first order of, the first answer is that you, the City Planning Commission, will consider the merits of every application on the Affordable Housing Fast Track when it's before you. And that every consideration, including the ones you just outlined, is a valid one for purposes of determining whether an individual application should be approved. Now, if a community district is not producing housing because there are no opportunities for housing there, none that the market wishes to produce, maybe it's just fully built out, the consequence of being in the bottom 12 is, well, not much, because no one will be pursuing any applications on the Affordable Housing Fast Track. So it has a little bit of a natural safeguard. The only thing this does is unlock people who wish to do things.
Right, but if we keep the same 12 on the bottom because they don't have the capacity, then we really haven't achieved anything with this, because there's the 12 are already taken up with those communities that have a lesser capacity to build or where the obstacles are greater to build. And so those that could benefit are not going to benefit because we're filled with these other ones.
Yes, Commissioner. And I would say your point goes to the wisdom of the underlying charter revisions themselves. I mean, these are fair points to criticize the overall approach that the voters adopted. And it's not intended to be the only, I think, mechanism to address the city's affordability goals, but rather just one.
Right.
And it's an incomplete one, and I will say that it is a wooden rule, the rate of affordable housing production, a wooden rule, and there was a rationale for making it a wooden one, which is that is less subject to political manipulation than a more sort of qualitative and gisty process where the districts subject to a affordable housing fast track would have been the subject of, say, political jockeying. And so there was a thought that having a clear rule had merits, even if a clear rule wouldn't always identify the ones that, the best planning principles would have identified.
And I do understand that, and I understand the limits of the fact that this charter change was adopted by the public, and this is just the methodology to implement that charter change. And I'm cognizant of that. I'm just trying to make the tool and the methodology, in my mind, as useful as I think we all want it to be. And so I'm not attempting to criticize what's been done. I am trying to explore how we could make it, in my mind, more efficacious and allow it to do what we all want it to do, which is to produce more affordable housing by lowering the entry cost for those neighborhoods that can produce the affordable housing.
Well, I'll just say, in some ways, the City Planning Commission is in a new and unique role, maybe not unique, but a new role with respect to applications on the Affordable Housing Fast Track and other applications subject to ELRP, right? This body would be the final decision maker. And so I think your decisions as individual commissioners about how you're going to think about your vote in individual applications has new weight and resonance.
I thank you for that, but I would also I would appreciate it if somewhere in this we also had a review period for how the methodology is working at like the fourth year before you look at the new. I mean, it may not be you, I understand that. And it may not be me, and I understand that, but that there be some review mechanism for what has happened and any corrections you might want to propose to the methodology.
Is there any limitation to future rulemaking to change the methodology that is being contemplated here?
No, none whatsoever. I would say that after the first list is adopted, suppose you approved this rule and made no changes and it was final, and then the first rule was, first list of 12 was published, then there'd be close to 5-year period during which the whole city, I think, will be evaluating how this has played out. And then the rule could be amended prior to the publication of the second list.
Thank you. I understand it could be. I was just asking for some certainty.
Well, we could, that's one thing I'll say is there's that principle that like commissions don't bind future commissions and legislatures don't bind future legislators. And I mean, you could you could have text in here that said the commission can look at it again, but you wouldn't need that text to look at it again, and you couldn't really bind the hands of a future commission in reevaluating with that language. So I think it would be primarily
hortatory. I was trying to bind the department.
Yeah, I don't think the department will want to be bound in this way.
I understood that.
So
I wasn't
so I
trying
think
to bind the commission.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner, for your attempt to bind the Ed department. Do you have more questions?
No.
Okay.
No.
Let me go to Vice Chair Knuckles to close us out.
Thank you. Alec, I don't recall there being an appeals process from a determination on this. Is there? I mean, where a community...
So with respect to applications that are on this fast track, that process ends with the City Planning Commission. Right. Your final decision will be final, not subject to review. With respect to other applications that aren't on this fast track, but that are in ULURP that also directly facilitate the creation of affordable housing, those are newly subject to a new body, the Affordable Housing Appeals Board, right? And so think about it this way. This is about what's eligible for the new ELURP. The Affordable Housing Appeals Board applies for the old ULURP. And so if you're on the ULURP track, you directly facilitate affordable housing because you deliver MIH, let's say, and there's a rejection of your application at the City Council or a modification of your application at the City Council, you can potentially appeal. The Appeals Board can eventually potentially call you up, and you can be reviewed through that new process, which would then, in that instance, be the final decision maker.
So understood with regard to that, but let us say a community board takes exception to a determination that they are amongst the 12 lowest, right? Can they ask for consideration, or do they have to take an Article 78, or what would be?
It would be an Article 78 challenge to the determination, and they could bring that challenge, I suppose, on any ground available in law, challenging the determination of the list. But I will say that being in the bottom 12 doesn't deprive a community of its voice for individual applications that are on that fast track. The community board still has the same review period on the affordable housing fast track that it does today, same 60-day review period. That feedback would then be considered by you as the final decision maker in determining how the City Planning Commission will treat an application. And I would expect, as the commission does today, it would take a very close look at a community board's feedback and the feedback of the public in its own public hearings to determine how to act on an application.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Okay. I will just note again that this is the part of the process for rulemaking where we, as the commission, would vote to publish the rule for public consideration. It will then, if we publish it, will become subject to public hearing, comment, et cetera, over the next few months. Then it will come back to this commission for consideration of those comments, for review and assessment and vote. And if it is then approved with or without any changes, it would then be published in the city record as the actual rule. So today's vote is to publish notice in the city record for this rule. So unless there are any questions about that process, I am going to seek assent right now by voice vote to publish the notice in the city record. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Opposed, nay. Okay. Ayes have it. We will proceed to post this in the public record. Thank you. Commissioner Osorio?
Thank you, Chair. I do have a question, and it's whether, as new rules come to the commission, is there an opportunity to hold this type of debate with, a little more time before we actually vote on publishing them, just so that we can, make recommendations, ask questions? I think today's session has been extremely useful, and it would have been amazing if we could have, had a little bit more time to do that.
I appreciate the comment. On the subject of not binding future commissions or departments, I will note that I am in no position to make that commitment at this moment. I also note that it's good for us to have these conversations in public as opposed to in private. So my feeling would generally be to have this conversation now, abide by the official rules, do it in public, engage with the department, and we have months to consider this and also give the public a chance to actually give us feedback, and then the commission will have the chance to actually evaluate all of that. So what I would say is, now is the time. I can't make any further commitments.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the next item.
The fourth item on our agenda is a certification of city map amendment in Queens Community District 12. Our presenters are Shristi Bajracharya Chakra and Abraham Abreu.
Hi, Shristi.
Good afternoon, Chair Gradnik and Commissioners. Thank you. My name is Trustee Bhattacharya Shakya. I am a borough planner at the Queen's office. Today we are presenting an application for city map changes in Jamaica Community District 12. The New York City Department of City Planning seeks a city map amendment to demap paper street designations along Atlantic Avenue between Van Wyck Expressway and 150th Street. This demapping action was contemplated during the Jamaica rezoning, but wasn't ready for implementation at that time. This proposal would formally demap the paper streets from multiple blocks included in the neighborhood rezoning and further facilitate new developments in the area. The image on the right is showing an aerial view of the area to the south of LIRR track and downtown Jamaica, where the demapping is taking place. The demapping action we present today has its roots in the Jamaica Neighborhood Plan, which was a planned vision for the future of the Jamaica neighborhood, developed with extensive public input. The goals of Jamaica Neighborhood Plan strove to enrich quality of life, foster a thriving local economy, and improve public spaces through zoning and policy changes, and identify necessary infrastructure investments to help support the potential for residential and economic growth. One of the major goals of Jamaica Neighborhood Plan is to unlock housing development potential and expand opportunities for jobs, especially in proximity to transit hub at Jamaica LIRR station. As you may recall, the Commission approved Jamaica Neighborhood Plan last year in August 13, 2025, and was subsequently approved by the City Council on October 29 of 2025. As approved, the plan is projected to result in approximately 12,000 housing units, of which around 4,000 units would be income restricted under the largest mapped emerged area in the city. The plan also is projected to create over 2 million square feet of new commercial and community facility spaces, adding more than 7,000 jobs in the area. The map shows the remapping area along 95th. The map shows the demapping area along 95th Avenue or Atlantic Avenue, marked by the yellow dashed line, extending from Remington Street to the west and 158th Street to the east, and partially lies within the areas that were rezoned for higher density under Jamaica Neighborhood Plan to expand mixed-use development in a transit-rich area. The unbuilt paper street that the city has no plans to use or expand currently affects approximately 76 properties along Atlantic Avenue. Without the demapping, the redevelopment of the properties within the area would require waivers of General City Law 35 that prohibits the construction of new structures within mapped streets. This requirement would lead to a complicated process that could hinder the redevelopment potential of the affected properties. If the paper street remains, it can also create cloud on title that makes financial insurance more complicated. Therefore, the demapping action we are seeking today clears obstacles to housing development in the neighborhood, which is consistent with and advances the major housing and economic goals of the Jamaica Neighborhood Plan. And I would like to pass it on to Abraham, who will be diving into the details of the demapping action.
Hello, good afternoon. As of 7 minutes ago, I'm Abraham Abreu, the City Map Team Leader, Technical Review. Thanks. So I'll walk you through a bit of the background of this, and then we'll dive into the actions and such. So, excuse me. In 1951, the city Queens Map number 3281 or City Plan number 7686 was adopted. This widened Atlantic Avenue on its south side from Sanders Place to 150th Street and established Atlantic Avenue from 150th Street to 158th Street. This was in the middle of the city expanding automobile infrastructure and the widening of Atlantic Avenue to carry more traffic between the Van Wyck Expressway and Liberty Avenue was considered essential, to the point where it was actually considered to build an underpass to connect eastbound Atlantic Avenue to eastbound Liberty Avenue by going underneath the westbound lanes of Liberty Avenue. This was all happening during the heyday of Robert Moses and his infrastructure automobile infrastructure expansion. At the time, he held 3 city government titles and 4 other titles in the region and state. The City Planning Commission report of January 24th, 1951, acknowledged the expense and extent of private property acquisition that would be needed to actually build out this expansion. So in 2010, the westernmost block of this proposal was built out following a second city map amendment that happened in 2007. But the remainder of the 1951 proposed changes were never built, and the city has no plans to do so now. So this application is essentially seeking to reverse the 1950s mapping so that the city map once again reflects the built condition and underlying property ownership. It also seeks to demap unbuilt portion of Sanders Place between Atlantic Avenue and 97th Avenue, and to narrow a portion of 150th Street in order to address these paper street conditions on the blocks affected by the 1951 mapping. So here's sort of a schematic map of the action being proposed, with the 4 main components being called out for you. So on this map, the red lines represent a narrowing, and the blue represents wholesale demapping. So here's the area map of the western part of the project area. You can see how the land use patterns vary, with the south side being predominantly 1- and 2-family residential buildings, which is shown in that pale yellow color, with the north side of Atlantic featuring more commercial, higher density residential, and some manufacturing. But as we go further east, the land use changes fairly dramatically and becomes overwhelmingly industrial and manufacturing uses represented by the purple. Taking a look at our aerial here, we can note dominance of large transportation uses, such as Long Island Railroad Jamaica Station, which serves all the Long Island Railroad branches, bar the Port Washington branch, the JFK Air Train, and also connects to the subway. You can see on the west the Associated Train Yard, and on the right, on the east, is York College, whose athletic field is at the edge of the picture. So let's dive into some site photos, do a little bit of a walking tour here. All of these site photo pictures will have the key map with an arrow showing you which way we're facing, as well as an aerial map. On all of these maps, on the photo and the aerial map, the dashed yellow line represents the demapping area. So this is Atlantic Avenue at Remington Street. This is the very western edge of the project area. We'll be moving from west to east. So you can see in this part the kind of low density residential that is characteristic of the south side of much of Atlantic Avenue. So for this picture, we've moved 1 block south to 97th Avenue. We're looking kind of north at the proposed demapping of Sanders Place. Mapped at 50 feet wide, this map, but unbuilt street runs through lots of private homes, as you can see here, both in the map and the aerial. So this application is proposing to demap the street to remove the encumbrance on private property. As you can see, lower scale residential is also characteristic of this part of the project area. So now we're back on Atlantic Avenue, continuing to move eastward. Looking west at Atlantic Avenue with Sean Bell Way, you can see that the map street widening of Atlantic Avenue encroaches on existing property, and this single-family home is entirely within the map street bed of Atlantic Avenue. If this map amendment is approved, that would no longer be the case. This is the same direction, facing eastward now. While there's still some low-scale residential on the south side, the eastern scale is beginning to change now, with more mixed-use commercial and larger-scale residential beginning to crop up, especially on the north side of the street, which is to the west of, to the left, excuse me, of us when we look at this picture. You may also see a familiar face there. So now we're at 147th Place in Atlantic Avenue, looking southwest, with a newer, larger scale development visible just beyond the area proposed to be demapped. Here you can see how new development sets back from the street by approximately 34 feet, which we presume was done to avoid building in the map right of way. Continuing to go east, we're now at Atlantic Avenue and 149th Street facing west. The larger scale buildings are evident in the background because much of this building in front of us is in the map right of way. Any development on this lot would either have to set back 34 feet from the street or get special approvals to build in the map street, as Christy was talking about earlier. Continuing eastward, we're now at 150th Street. At this point, the use mix has morphed into overwhelmingly heavy industrial uses. Looking south from the northwest corner of Atlantic and 155th, we're now at kind of the top of the narrowing of 150th Street. The demapping area here sort of tapers, as you can see in the aerial. This is the widest portion at the north, and as it travels southwards towards 197, it kind of tapers off. As you can see here, we're now farther down 150th, where Beaver Street kind of merges into it. The line of the demapping of 150th Street, or the narrowing, is to our right on the west side. So now we've gone back up to Atlantic Avenue and 150th Street. We're looking now at the map but unbuilt portion of Atlantic Avenue. As you can see, this very wide map street runs straight through existing industrial use buildings. Continuing to go east, this is the most heavily industrial part of the project area. This view of Tuckerton Street between Liberty Avenue and 157th also shows the Atlantic Avenue paper street. If it had been built out, the photographer would be basically standing in the middle of an intersection. Now we've gone a little bit farther north on Tucker Street, looking down at the area to be the paper street, rather. The approximate path of the map unbuilt Atlantic Avenue across our field of vision is shown in the yellow. And lastly, this is 158th Street at Liberty Avenue. This is where the map unbuilt portion of Atlantic Avenue ends. So now the actions. For every action, I will call out on this key map where what we're talking about is, as well as have an aerial photo just to kind of give you a better idea of what it looks like. So the first one, and the first and most geographically extensive part, is the narrowing of Atlantic Avenue. As mentioned previously, that city map amendment in 1951 was filed. That widened Atlantic Avenue by moving the southern street line, depending on the stretch you're talking about, 36 to 40 feet. This condition was never built out. So this application would restore Atlantic Avenue to its map width in accordance with the built condition. Here you can see a portion of the map street that's covering private parking lots and private residences. And this would affect about 2,500 linear feet of Atlantic Avenue. Next, narrow the street lines of 150th Street between Atlantic Avenue and 97th Avenue. Again, this is to bring the city map back in accordance with the built condition. It looks like that. This aims to correct the entire tax block for that last block of Atlantic Avenue. All affected tax lots are privately owned, and this demapping covers approximately 8,556 square feet. Third, the demapping of the unbuilt portion of Atlantic Avenue between 150th Street and 158th. This map unbuilt section of Atlantic Avenue runs through several industrial properties, with exception of the Long Island Railroad tracks that you can see in the aerial. All of these affected lots are privately owned. This portion of Atlantic Avenue to be demapped is approximately 107,980 square feet. Finally, we have eliminating the map but unbuilt portion of Sanders Place between Atlantic Avenue and 97th Avenue, currently mapped at 50 feet wide. As you can see in the aerial, this paper street runs largely over private property, but one lot is owned by the Department of Citywide Administrative Services, which is highlighted in blue on this image. And this demapping is a little over 19,000 square feet. So, in summary, New York City Department of City Planning is seeking amendment to the city map to narrow the street lines of Atlantic Avenue between Remington and 150th Streets, narrow the street line of 150th Avenue between Atlantic Avenue and 97th, eliminate the unbuilt portion of Atlantic Avenue between 150th Street and 158th Street, and finally eliminate the matte but unbuilt portion of Sanders Place between Atlantic Avenue and 97th. These changes would restore the city map to roughly the same configuration as was established prior to the 1951 city map amendment, which again required substantial acquisition and construction to implement and therefore was never built out, and also to remove map street portions for the already developed lots, thereby supporting the redevelopment of those lots. Thank you. That concludes the presentation, and we'd be happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you very much. I don't know if there are any questions. Okay. Seeing none, thank you very much to both of you. This item is certified.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're going to change our order slightly. Madam Secretary, go ahead.
Yes, the fifth item on our agenda is a City Council modification scope determination for 1417 Avenue U rezoning. The City Council proposes to modify the zoning text amendment to Appendix F, removing MIH Option 1, and staff believe this modification is within scope, noting that Commissioner Ramprashad and Crowell are recused.
Thank you very much. I'm going to seek assent by a voice vote to send a scope determination letter to the council on this. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the next.
The sixth item on our agenda is a City Council modification scope determination for 6312 Broadway rezoning. The City Council proposes to modify the zoning text amendment to Appendix F, removing MIH Option 2 and adding MIH Option 3, and staff believe this modification is within scope.
Thank you. Seek assent by a voice vote again to send a scope determination letter to the council on this item. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, thanks very much. We will proceed. Okay, Madam Secretary, back to the next item on our agenda.
Yes. The seventh item on our agenda is a certification of zoning map and zoning text amendments in Staten Island Community District 1. Our presenter is Justin Rivera.
All right. Hey, good afternoon, Commission. My name is Justin Rivera. It's a pleasure to be presenting here today. And today I'm presenting 198-208 Richmond Terrace. Okay. This is an application submitted by Yevgeny Levovsky of the Economic Development Opportunity Fund 1 LLC for a zoning map amendment from an existing R6 within the Hillsides Preservation District to an R73 zoning district, modifying the existing C22 commercial overlay to a C24, expanding in depth by 25 feet, as well as a related zoning text amendment to Appendix F to establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area. All right. Moving along to the proposed development, the proposed rezoning would facilitate a 14-story, approximately 145 feet in height, 162 feet at the bulkhead, mixed-use residential and community facility building, of which is comprised of 117 dwelling units, 30 of which are proposed under MIH, as well as approximately 10,000 feet of community facility with 4 parking spaces proposed. And I would like to note that this elevation on the screen here today is illustrative, and the envelope of the proposed R73 C24 commercial overlay can be adjusted rather. All right, moving along to the area map. As seen here, the immediate surrounding area is characterized by a mix of land uses, including residential, manufacturing, commercial, and open space. Right. Block 13, lot 60, of which is non-applicant owned, is currently improved with an 11-story mixed-use building featuring 40 dwelling units, and that would be west of the development site. The development site, Block 13, Lots 68, 71, and 73, were previously improved with two-family detached homes, which have since been demolished. Block 13, Lot 8, which exists south of the development site, is currently improved with two 20-story residential buildings, of which only one portion is part of the proposed project area. As alluded to previously, the project area consists of continuous tax lots 68, 71, and 73, of which have been demolished on Staten Island's Block 13, of which are all under the applicant's ownership and will, again, have been demolished. Tax Lot 60 and part of Lot 8 are featured within the project area, however, are non-applicant owned. And it is worthy in noting that in 2021, portions of Tax Lot 116 and 119 within the development site were removed from the Special Hillsides Preservation District and remapped as part of the Special St. George and upzoned from an R6 district with a partial C22 overlay as part and in conjunction with the River North rezoning along Hamilton Avenue South in this tax map. Special districts. So the Special St. George Special District was created in 2008 to build upon St. George's, that is the Special Hillsides Preservation District. Was created and currently mapped in 1987. The district was designed to preserve the unique aesthetic value of the existing hillsides within the borough and protect the neighborhood character of the district through preservation of the area's hillsides from erosion, excessive stormwater runoff, and it is one of two special zoning districts that encompass a significant portion of the North Shore of Staten Island. Special St. George District. This was created in 2008 to build upon St. George's existing strength as a civic center and transit hub, as well as an encouraging center of pedestrian-friendly business and low to mid-density residences. All right. Project area overview. The area surrounding the project site is among Staten Island's most diverse and transit-accessible neighborhood, predominantly zoned R6 with pockets of R3 to R4, low to mid-resident zoning districts. The development site is located approximately a quarter mile from the Staten Island Ferry Terminal, which offers direct ferry service to Lower Manhattan, as well as fast ferry service to Brooklyn and western portions of Manhattan. We also have access to the Staten Island Railroad, which runs north-south along Staten Island's eastern side, also located within the Staten Island Ferry Terminal. All right. And the MTA operates 14 local routes and 9 limited stop routes from the terminal as well, highlighting the effectiveness of this transit hub. Okay. Oh, I would like to also note that in this visual, the project area is highlighted in a red dash stroke with adjacency to the already CPC approved River North project, of which still has not since been developed, as well as 3759 Hamilton Avenue, which is in the process of public review, and the existing Castleton Towers, which is a 20-floor residential development. Project area photographs. In photograph 1, we are facing westward, showcasing the existing residential building, western adjacent to development site, otherwise known as the View. Photograph 2, this is a photo facing southwest, showcasing the recently demolished and vacant development site, of which wasn't visible within the aerial. Photograph 3 shows a southeastern view of the surrounding area, also showcasing the existing residential development on the western adjacent lot, the intersection of Richmond Terrace and Nicholas Street. Photo 4 faces northwest, showing the sidewalk condition along the south side of Richmond Terrace. Photo 5 also showcasing the sidewalk condition along the south side of Richmond Terrace, however, facing southeast from the project area. Also showcasing the existing wheel site parking garage. All right. Photo 6 shows the sidewalk condition south of the development site, showcasing the slope along the eastern side of Nicholas Street. And as mentioned, the subject area highlighted in a red dash stroke is being rezoned from an R6, an R6 C22 commercial overlay to an R73 C24. The applicant is, the project area rather, is within an R6 and R6 C22 zoning district, which typically allows for medium density residential development of 2.2 FAR under standard residence development and an FAR of 3.9 within the provisions of the qualifying affordable housing. It's worthy in noting the special hillsides preservation district regulations limit development on zoning lots as determined by the average steepness of the slope and steep slope buffer areas. All right. Mandatory inclusionary housing. The applicant is proposing to map MIH options 1 and 2 over the rezoning area, and for their proposed development, they would build under option 1. MIH option 2 requires 30% of dwelling units to be income restricted at an average of 80% AMI. MIH option 1 requires 25% of dwelling units to be income restricted at an average of 60% AMI, and 80% AMI for a family of 3 is approximately $111,840, of which translates to a 2-bedroom rent of about $2,800, and this can be higher than median rents for existing 2-bedrooms in some outlying neighborhoods. Moving along to the racial equity report. This application, of course, is subject to the racial equity report requirements since it seeks approval for an increase in permitted residential floor area of at least 50,000 square feet. Between 2019 and 2023, the median household income within Staten Island's Community District 1 was approximately $86,970, which was lower than estimates for Staten Island, but higher than New York City at about $98,906 and $79,738 respectively. The estimated monthly rent of income restricted units for households between 40 and 80% AMI ranges from $1,130 for a studio up to $3,370 for a 3-bedroom. Okay. The project area is located within the North Shore Public Use Microdata areas, home to approximately 189,663 total residents, of which approximately 39% identified as Asian non-Hispanic, 3% identified as Black non-Hispanic, and 28% identified as Hispanic or Latino of any race, and 26% identified as White non-Hispanic. Between 2010 and 2020, the total population in this area increased 8%, which is greater than the 6% seen in the borough as a whole. Asian non-Hispanic population saw an increase in population during this period of about 57%. Black non-Hispanic population grew about 4%, and the Hispanic Latino of any race population saw an increase of about 18%. While the white non-Hispanic population saw a decrease of about 10% in this area at this time. In summary, the requested actions include a rezoning map amendment from an existing R6 and R6 C22 commercial overlay to an R73 C24, and a related zoning text amendment to Appendix F to establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area. And these actions are proposed to facilitate the development of an approximately 97,200 square foot, 14-story mixed-use building containing 117 dwelling units, 30 of which would be income restricted, featuring 10,100 square feet of community facility use and 4 parking spaces at 198-208 Richmond Terrace in the St. George neighborhood of Staten Island's Community District 1. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Osorio? I'm sorry, Commissioner Cerullo, then Commissioner Osorio.
Okay. Justin, thank you very much. So I'm thinking to myself, it's a little like Groundhog Day. This, that we were in the same neighborhood, in the same block, with the same general issues. So, and this is beginning the public review process, so it'll be interesting to see what everyone has to say about this back home. But a couple of questions, just to be clear. You mentioned, and I believe you were speaking of the Castleton Towers when you talked about the 20-story towers. Did you say part of this map change includes the property of the Castleton, or some portion of it is included? And if so, what impact does that have on the Castleton property, the Castleton Towers property?
Yes, a part of Block 13, Lot 8, of which encapsulates the Castleton Towers development, is included within the proposed rezoning, and that would be a slight portion of the northern part of the lot, of which is adjacent to the development site. And as far as the impacts to the Castleton Tower development, I can get back to you on that.
I appreciate it, and also what the rationale is to include it. I don't know what the point of that is, and just being concerned about what that could mean for the Castleton Towers piece and what impact it's having on this proposal. So I just would like to understand that. Could you just for a second remind me of where we are on the privately owned homes? Which ones are in the applicant's own? I know many of them are gone already. So I'll rephrase. How many homes remain on this site, and how many of them are not in the applicant's ownership?
Okay, that's a great question. I'll provide you some clarification.
Sure.
So blocks 13, lots 68, 71, and 73 were previously improved with 2-family detached homes, of which have since been demolished and do not exist anymore, as shown in this aerial here, or yes, photograph rather.
Yep.
And I apologize for any confusion that may have been communicated, because in this aerial, they do.
I want to keep track, because we've been spending a lot of time in this area, as you well know. So I just want to make sure I know the difference between what's applicant owned and what isn't. And then my follow-up question would be what communications or conversations are happening with the owners, if there are homes that are in private ownership, what's happening with them at the moment?
Okay. So as far as communications with privately owned homes and residences, there aren't any homes within the development site at this time.
Privately owned.
Privately owned outside of the visible 11-story structure, the View luxury residences, which are western adjacent to site. But I could get back to you on whether or not they've.
And I'm assuming those aren't destined for demolition.
I do want to clarify one thing we recognized while we were giving this presentation. There's a little bit of a misrepresentation on this slide. The red line is the applicant-owned property.
Yes.
Justin correctly said there's no houses remaining there where the applicant owns. The rezoning boundary, as shown correctly on all the other aerial maps, actually does extend over that corner existing building which would be in compliance with the proposed rezoning. And we know of no plans for that lot.
So I would, to follow my automatic question is, why? Why are we capturing in the rezoning map the existing building and not just limiting it to the development site?
That's a great question as well. In terms of how the geography was determined for the proposed rezoning, it does speak to the previously CVC approved River North rezoning, of which also had extended that R73C24 commercial overlay to that boundary. And
that was another question. I'm glad you brought that up because there was a question on that too. So good.
So in a sense, this proposal isn't something that, hasn't been brought up to the CPC in a sense, and the city council did modify that geography as a form of development control. Correct. And to address, expectations for growth within that area of St. George. As far as additional rationale as to why that rezoning boundary does extend to that corner adjacent to Nicholas Street.
Yes.
It's evident that this portion or these Block 13 lots have more in common with other lots that are included within the St. George Special District, as well as are limited in terms of development by the hillsides geography.
I got it. So just two quick follow-ups on that. This was a parcel that, as part of River North, the commission approved, and it was incorporated into our final determination on River North. It was, as part of the council's modification, that lot, we'll say, call it a lot, that section was removed. And now this application, which interestingly, because it's not River North's, but somehow it's capturing it also in this proposal. So we're seeing it back in, which is an interesting thing, but whether the applicant thinks this time around, the second time's a charm, and it will be safe in here is a whole other thing. The substantive question I would ask is, while I understand you reported, or Katie, you did, that it's within this building, this existing building is within the zoning of what we are extending it into. What would be possible for this building or site in comparing what exists today versus what could be constructed if this piece of it is approved?
We may have to get back to you on that, Commissioner, but I want to clarify. Are you asking about the existing building on the corner and what the effects are of
I think I am.
R73?
It's hard to see on the.
Good. But or are you asking about the applicant's proposed building, which is a vacant lot currently?
No. I know. I mean, the applicants. What I think we're seeing what the applicant's able to do pursuant to the rezoning. I'm not questioning that at this point. What I'm questioning is the extension of the zoning map into the I'll call it the Nicholas Street building, and the impacts that's having, or the potential it's creating. I know this is a relatively newer building for the neighborhood, but what does that mean? What could happen here if someone wanted to come in and either expand this building, if that's possible, take it down, build something new, because we've created a new underlying zoning on this site for a reason I'm still not quite sure it's included. That's
understood. We can get back to you on that with a little bit more detail. This building has inertia, for lack of a better word. We're not expecting it to go anywhere or.
No, and I know I know
in the intervening years,
residents living there, I know all that, but, you know, we're thinking this through. It's, I guess, because the underlying question has not been answered, and I'm not saying you need to answer it, we're not the applicant, but it's being included again. So what's the benefit of including this building?
I will just give a limited response on behalf of the department that does work with these applicants when they come to us with rezoning proposals. This is the corner. It's rational in the department's eyes to extend an upzoning boundary to an area that's a node, that's a corner. In many instances, not in all, but in many, and certainly here, this is a node of the greater St. George district and along Richmond Terrace, where there's a lot of activity and pedestrian activity and growth. And so to leave this out of the proposed zoning wouldn't necessarily be a rational zoning map. And that would be about the extent of the department's advisement to this applicant. Okay. They can speak to you further, and we will also get back to you with a more specific analysis on the potential of this building under what's proposed.
That's all I ask. I thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Osorio, thank you for.
Of course. Yeah, thank you, Chair. No, thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. Thanks so much for the materials. Of course, you know, we're processing this application in and of itself, but it's happening in a context where, you know, we're referring back to other proposals. And so in building on Commissioner Cerullo's question, this is more of a question for you, because again, I just want to make super clear that I understand that this is type 2 application, and therefore there isn't a requirement for more detailed environmental impacts. And so, but I feel I need a little bit more information, and so I'm wondering whether the office can provide a little bit more context in terms of what the impact of this development, this proposal can have, perhaps in the context of what was identified in the River North full EIS, given the fact that there were significant adverse impacts identified there and some mitigation actions identified. So what I'm trying to say is, understanding that this application in and of itself doesn't require additional environmental impact analysis, I'm wondering if you can help us sort of like provide a little bit of a context of how much more impacts can we, you know, really maintain here or can sustain, and or, you know, to the credit of the applicant, you know, what are the type of infrastructure projects that are already in place or in the pipeline for us to fully understand the longer term impact of the proposal? Does that make sense?
Yes, that question does make sense and is in line with the developments that are proposed within the area or have since been approved. Infrastructure is a very important factor in determining whether or not projects like these are feasible for neighborhoods such as St. George. And in terms of environmental review, our environmental division has conducted review following the green fast track processes, of which I can get back to you on the proposed environmental impacts regarding the rezoning of this block 13 and the associated lots.
That would be great. Thank you. I am specifically very interested in the potential reduction in open space for 1,000 residents. And on the active side particularly, and then on the potential transportation impacts.
In terms of reduction in open space, could you provide a little more background for that?
I would like to know where will this proposal leave us in terms of the amount of open space for 1,000 residents?
Okay.
Thank you. And one other quick question. I mean, I appreciate how in the application there is sort of like an explanation of how the proposal will meet the requirements for electrification, or whether that it will meet the requirements for electrification as a requirement of the green fast tracking. But if you can maybe request a little bit more information from the applicant in terms of how they plan to do that, like what's exactly the plan, I would appreciate it.
Yes, that could be done.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner Dweck.
Thank you. I noted that the structure for the project is through the Opportunity Zone program. Am I correct?
Could you repeat that, please?
I noted that the structure for the development is through the Opportunity Zone program.
Yes, the applicant is a part of the Economic Opportunity Zone Fund.
Correct. So, my question is, the new recently enacted legislation modifies the program somewhat, and there's a redesignation of locations, eligible sites coming up in the next 6 months, or I think maybe 9 months. And my question was, has the applicant got any clarity on whether or not that site will be redesignated as an opportunity zone, A? And B, if not, what guidance have they received that they can continue this project under the OZ parameters on the first designation, which would be OZ.1? So maybe they have some technical guidance from an attorney that they could share with us so that we could study it to see the reality of this coming to fruition under that project and coming to fruition at all.
Yeah, that's a great question and comments. I think that is something we can definitely get back to you on following correspondence with the applicant team. I will admit at this time, this is a point that hadn't been largely discussed within their application package, but it is definitely valuable information, and we'll get back to you on that.
Thank you.
All righty. Other questions? Thank you, Commissioner Dwight. Other questions? There being none, this is certified. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Vice Chair. The 8th item is a non-ULURP post-referral review for a cancellation of an existing restrictive declaration in the Bronx Community District 7, and our presenter is Joy Kim.
Hi, Joy.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. No longer morning. Okay, great. This is an application by TCPRNC Real Estate LLC, an affiliate of Citadel Care Center, for a cancellation of a restrictive declaration, or RD for brevity, recorded in connection to special permit CP 22299 to enable the development of a new 4-story building with 129 beds, long-term care facility beds at 2553 University Avenue in the Bronx Community District 7. The surrounding area is characterized by 6 to 7-story multifamily residential buildings with some ground floor retail uses along West Kingsbridge Road. Across Webb Avenue is the Bronx Veterans Hospital Complex, which rises up to 9 stories. The recently approved Kingsbridge Armory project is several blocks east of the project area. There are various nearby open spaces, such as the Old Croton Aqueduct Walk, 1 block east of the development site, DeVoe Park, 2 blocks south, and St. James Park, 4 blocks east. The site is also 3 blocks west of the 4 subway stop at Kingsbridge Road. The BX3, BX9, and BX31 buses stop in front of the project site at West Kingsbridge Road. The Kingsbridge Heights neighborhood north of West Fordham Road and west of Jerome Avenue is predominantly zoned R6 with a few C13 commercial overlays on wide streets. The site of the Kingsbridge Armory project is zoned M14A and R72. This is a view of the site facing southwest from University Avenue. The 3-story building in the foreground would be replaced with a proposed development. This is a view of the project area facing southwest from West Kingsbridge Road. And finally, this is a view of the project area facing northeast from Webb Avenue. The RD subject to the proposed action was recorded in connection with a special permit granted in 1973. This was one of the first special permits granted under then zoning resolution section 74902. That special permit was required for nursing homes to be able to access community facility FAR. The applicant at the time, Jewish Home and Hospital for the Aged, constructed a long-term care campus under this special permit. Subsequent zoning text amendments, including zoning for quality and accessibility in 2016 and the City of Yes for Housing Opportunity in 2024, have made the 1973 special permit unnecessary because all the buildings on the campus are now compliant with zoning as of right. Therefore, the applicant will now surrender the 1973 special permit. The RD required approximately 16,000 square feet of private open space for the campus in exchange for the community facility FAR that was granted by the special permit. The RD associated with that special permit states that the commission can cancel or modify the declaration if it would not be against the public interest. As the applicant is now surrendering the special permit, they are also seeking cancellation of the associated restrictive declaration. This RD cancellation would enable the replacement of an existing 3-story administrative building with a new 4-story building with larger floor plates to accommodate 129 new long-term care facility beds. The applicant intends to rehabilitate the parts of the existing open space that would not be affected by the new building, and will also add landscaped areas to compensate for the part of the open space that will be encroached by the new building. The total new landscaped area on campus would be comparable to the existing open space, about 15,000 square feet in total, compared to the 16,000 currently existing on the site. Upon approval of this application, the project area would also be merged into a single zoning lot. And after addition of the new building, the entire campus would still be compliant with zoning as of right, including yard and open space requirements. The proposed development would increase the total built FAR on the lot to 3.1, which is less than the 3.9 FAR that would be permitted on the site. On January 27, 2026, Bronx Community Board 7, by a vote of 25 in favor, 0 against, and 0 abstaining, submitted a conditional favorable recommendation with a condition to, quote, require the developer to construct a rooftop green space to compensate for the portion of the restricted area used for the proposed project. The department supports this proposed cancellation of the restrictive declaration. In addition to the fact that the proposed development and all existing buildings in the project area are now compliant with zoning as of right, the cancellation of the RD in connection with the surrender of the 1973 special permit would not be against the public interest. The proposed development also provides an essential service to the public and would add 129 long-term beds to the campus. Furthermore, a new approximately 15,000 square foot garden would provide landscaped open space for buildings on the campus. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Joy. Any questions? Commissioner Osorio.
Thank you, Vice Chair Knuckles. Thank you so much for the presentation. Quick question. So what was the general response to the recommendation or the condition put forth by the community board in terms of the rooftop? And more generally, what else can you share with us in terms of the sustainability measures proposed over here? I'm specifically interested in whether or not there are any renewables possible, et cetera.
The applicant noted that this building, and I looked into this as well, that the new building would need to comply with local law 92, I believe. So there would need to be either a solar or green roof, regardless, on the building, regardless of the community board's suggestion. Sorry, could you repeat the last part of your question? Did you say removable?
Renewable.
Oh, renewable.
Energy, yeah.
I am not sure about renewable energy on the campus.
No, thank you. I mean, the two questions are tied together.
Mm-hmm.
If we can get a little bit more information on what is the plan. I mean, now, it's not just a condition, but it's a requirement. So either a rooftop or either solar or a rooftop. And so I would like to know what's the plan here.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Regarding the commissioner's question, you can hopefully get back to him with that information. However, what's being asked of us at this moment is an assent by voice vote to send an approval letter to the buildings department approving the removal of the restricted declaration. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. 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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Chair, we don't have any other business before you today.
You're kidding. All right. there's no other matters for discussion today, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
The time is 12:58.